It'll be Jason Gingell out of the hold of Mesco. Good snap, good hold, and the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. They call it Hump Day for a reason. And that's where we are here on a Wednesday morning. Welcome to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Thom Brennaman. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. You can watch us on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We ask you please subscribe to the program. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook, where the show is streaming on the Chatterbox Sports page. Flip the notification switch on. If you prefer to join us in podcast form, by all means, many of you do, and please continue to do so. Share it with your friends. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you are dialed in. Bengals, after an off day yesterday, back to work today, getting ready for Sunday's road game in Tampa. Brady and the Bucs, 6-7 on the year. And I mean, they are fighting for a playoff spot. 6-7 leads their division, if you can believe that. But they have Atlanta and they have Carolina right on their heels. Game time is 4:25 at Paycor Stadium. Bengals have won 5 straight and open as a 3.5-point favorite. Bad news, they thought that was the case when he got injured the other night, but Kyler Murray has a torn ACL, suffering that injury in the game on Monday, a no-contact play, just a short 3-yard run. No word yet on when he'll have surgery or a timetable for his return. World Cup, Argentina is headed to the final after blanking Croatia yesterday 3-0. I mean, you know you're a big leaguer when all they have to do is just say your first or last name. Messi, right? Casey, you and Paul and Brandon, you guys are the soccer guys. Messi, right?
Absolutely.
So like Corleone. You don't even need to see Michael Corleone. You say Corleone. Corleone. Messi became the country's all-time World Cup scoring leader yesterday, and Argentina will face the winner of today's match between France and Morocco. College hoops, I don't know if it surprised you, but Wes Miller, word on the street, is getting a contract extension through the 28-29 season at UC to the tune of nearly $3 million a year. It's interesting. It's almost $3 million, but going into the Big 12, depending on who you believe, that would make him just the 7th or 8th highest paid coach in the conference. Miller is in his 2nd season at UC. They went 18-15 a year ago. The Bearcats play Miami tonight at Fifth Third Arena. Xavier hosted Southern last night. Paul, you were there.
Yep.
How did the X-Men look? I know they won 79-59.
Yeah, it was a choppy game, kind of a weird game. Coming off the shootout, you have finals week. You're going into Big East play. I mean, they won by 20. It wasn't always pretty. Didn't shoot the ball great the whole game. I think they shot just under 50%, but just felt a little weird and turned the ball over 19 times. But it's one of those games
That's right.
You win it and move on.
That's right. You win it and move on. They've won 4 straight, I think it is now, right?
Yep.
And they go to 8-3 on the year. Big East Conference play begins for the X-Men Friday night at Georgetown. Baseball, the Giants continue to load up on pitching and everything else for that matter. Early yesterday, they signed pitcher Ross Stripling to a 2-year, $25 million deal. He worked as a starter last season in Toronto. First time he's ever been a full-time starter. Had his best year, won 10 games, had an ERA right at 3. And then very early this morning, Eastern time, the monster signing by the Giants, Carlos Correa, a 13-year deal worth $350 million. The rich keep on getting richer. We'll talk with Hall of Fame broadcaster Marty Brennaman about all this coming up in just a matter of moments. But we introduced this day in sports history for the first time on Off the Bench yesterday. And we're back at it again today. Casey and Paul, what's on the docket?
We do. We do have this day in sports history. Casey, do we have the –
Here you go.
We do have it right here. All right, Casey. All right, Thom.
Okay, let's hear it.
Back in 1953, Sandy Koufax signed with the Dodgers today.
We have a great story behind that, which some of you may know, some of you may not know. What's next?
1998, Ricky Williams won the Heisman Trophy. 2019, Joe Burrow, he won the Heisman Trophy.
Big league.
And in 1985, Roger Maris died of cancer.
I think he was, 61, right?
We have 51.
Or 50, really? 51?
That's what Casey wrote down.
Wow. Okay. The interesting thing about the Koufax deal is, as you know, he attended the University of Cincinnati. What you might not know is he attended UC as a walk-on on the freshman basketball team. The assistant coach, Ed Jucker, had no idea who he was. He later earned a partial scholarship, but in the spring of '54, he made the varsity baseball team, which, interestingly, Ed Jucker also coached the baseball team. He only pitched 1 year at UC. He went 3-1 with an ERA at 2.8. Now, a scout for the Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers at the time, a guy named Bill Zinser, sent the Dodgers front office a glowing report that apparently was filed away and completely forgotten. Okay, so here you have Sandy Koufax, walks on the basketball team, tries out for the baseball team, pitches 1 year. He tried out for the New York Giants baseball team at the Polo Grounds. He did the same for the Pittsburgh Pirates at Forbes Field. And during his Pirates tryout, apparently, his fastball broke the thumb of Sam Narin, the team's bullpen coach. Branch Rickey, then the general manager, interestingly, of the Pirates, told his scout that Koufax had the greatest fastball and the greatest arm he had ever seen. So file that away, right? The Pirates, however, failed to offer Koufax a contract because he had already committed to the Dodgers. Dodgers scout Al Campanis, who later became the general manager, heard about Koufax from another part-time scout, saw him pitch, invited him to Ebbets Field for a tryout. Walter Alston grew up just the road up here. He was a manager of the Dodgers, and their scouting director, Fresco Thompson, were both there. And they watched and said, "There are 2 times in my life," said Campanis, "the hair on the arms, on my arms, have stood up. The first time I saw the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and the second time was when I saw Sandy Koufax throw a fastball." I never knew that story. Did you know
didn't
that story?
either.
Maybe a lot of you knew that story out there already. I had no idea. And by the way, they gave him they signed him to a $6,000 salary, gave him a $14,000 signing bonus, and Koufax used the money as tuition to finish his university education. Big leaguer Sandy Koufax. Oh.
That's a great story.
I mean, you look at some of the numbers this guy put up, and we talk about these pitchers today, and look, they're good. It's fine. But when you start going down year by year, this cat won 165 games with a career RA at 2.7. He had 137 complete games. This guy was insane. Insane. And it was interesting. I had a conversation years ago with Bobby Cox when he was managing the Atlanta Braves, and that's when Randy Johnson was at the peak of his career, when Johnson won 3 or 4 straight Cy Youngs pitching for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Bobby Cox saw Sandy Koufax pitch. And I asked him, I said, who was better, Koufax or Johnson? He said, you know what? Flip a coin. That's how good Johnson was. That's how good Koufax was. Now, Marty Brennaman, a Hall of Famer, he's old enough to remember Sandy Koufax. You've had a chance. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Dad, I think you just saw him recently when you were at Vin Scully's funeral?
Of course, there were so many former Dodgers there and people from the baseball world, not exclusive to the Dodgers, that came to Vin's funeral, and Sandy and his wife were there. And we chatted with him briefly. He has an amazing recall for names. And it goes back, I'll tell you another story. Years and years ago, you mentioned Ed Jucker. UC decided to have a fundraiser for their baseball field. And of course, Jucker, as you mentioned, coached both sports. And they called me and said, we've got Sandy Koufax coming in. Would you MC the brunch that we have on, I think it was a Saturday morning? And I said, yeah. And so a lot of people were there. Donations were made to improve the baseball facility at UC. And Jucker and his wife came in from Hilton Head, South Carolina. And Koufax came, and he's a very reclusive guy. He does not like to be singled out. It's just an uncomfortable thing for him, but he's a very pleasant guy. And he showed up. He came on Friday and spent 3 hours with the UC pitching staff the night before, teaching them how to throw the curveball that he threw. And that was a pitch that brought it all together for him. He had the good fastball, but once he developed a curve and could throw it for strikes, everything changed with him. And he came in, he worked with the UC baseball team, and he was a guy that when he came into a room, and it's still true today, he has a certain aura about him that seemingly everything stops and all the attention is directed at him. He's a very handsome guy, a very soft-spoken guy, but very, very pleasant. And it was one of the thrills of my lifetime to meet him. And then years later, Amanda and I saw him, the big mall in Phoenix. We were over there one day during spring training. And he and his wife were in there, and I saw him across in a department store, and I turned to Amanda. I said, "You know who that is?" She said, "Yeah, that's Sandy Koufax." We went over there. He remembered my name, and you know what a thrill that gives anybody when you meet somebody of incredible celebrity and they know who you are. And so I've seen him twice since that breakfast years ago in honor of Ed Jucker, and he's just a first-class individual in every sense of the word.
It's interesting you bring up about the aura he has about him. I'm convinced that so much of that has to do, Dad, with the fact that he basically was a recluse forever. Now, in recent years, a little less so. He's come out to do things like you just made reference to with Ed Jucker, or whether it's things with the Dodgers, which he was not doing for a long, long time. I think that has a lot to do with it, don't you? And by all accounts, was a guy that was a grinder and was just going out to try and be the best baseball player he could possibly be.
No, I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but you bring up a good example, because he was a guy that abhorred the celebrity and the publicity that went around his chase to eventually breaking Ruth's record. He didn't like it at all. And it was sad, because they say he was a very nice guy, but he just was not comfortable. He was in a perfect situation up until the 61 season, because he was in the same outfield with Mickey Mantle. And Mantle, garnered, if not most of it, not all of it, most of the publicity on that Yankee team. And Roger Maris was basically there. He was a good player, but he was not the kind of guy that drew the focus of all the media covering baseball. The same thing that happened when he decided unknowingly to make a run at Babe Ruth's record. He was not comfortable with that at all. And it was unfortunate. The guy's doing what he can do. And I can always remember watching the home run that he hit to break Ruth's record. And I was in a fraternity house at Randolph-Macon College before I transferred to Carolina, and we watched the game on TV and watched him hit the home run off Tracy Stallard, number 61. No, his situation was sad, because I don't know what people expected him to do. Just stop hitting home runs and preserve the single season record for Ruth. But it was unfortunate that he had to go through what he went through.
We've talked about this ad nauseum on this show, but every single day it seems like there's another reason to talk about it. Look, the San Diego Padres are spending money like crazy. The Dodgers are not spending money like crazy. They allow Trey Turner to leave, and off he goes to Philadelphia. And now the Giants. This was a team that won, I think it was 105 or 107 games 2 years ago, the most in franchise history, and they didn't even win their own division. And then they fell back to earth this past year for multiple reasons. They had a lot of injuries, and they just weren't as good. And they've decided they're all in on beating the Dodgers and the Padres. I mean, they've brought in a couple of pitchers within the last few days, and then the monster deal last night or early this morning Eastern time.
I think I've lost you, Tom. Audio's gone. I don't hear you. I don't hear you, Tom.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time. And if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees.
I don't know what the hell happened.
Ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Swinney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Swinney, the original used car superstore.
Times they would use negative motivation as like you can't do this or hey man, you won't do that, where nowadays you can't use negative motivation to the young kids.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Obviously, we're having some technical issues here today. Casey McAllister and Paul Fritchner hard at work to try and get everything straightened out, and hopefully we have. And that means we welcome back Marty Brennaman. Dad, I was starting to ask you about this Carlos Correa thing.
Right.
You know, Correa, Turner, and I'm drawing a blank on the third. At the end of these contracts, each of them is going to be 41 years old. And already
Correct.
Some of the beat writers for the San Francisco Giants are saying, hey, look, there's no way he'll still be here then. The general manager won't be here. The president won't be here. Said, but we're just trying to win, or the Giants are trying to win right now. $27 million a year for Carlos Correa.
Well, I mean, there's some people. Keith Law rated him as the number one free agent of all of them. That's just one so-called baseball expert, although Keith Law has a lot of juice in the world of baseball, professional baseball. I don't care if he's a number one free agent in the history of the world. I just scratch my head in wonderment that teams are willing to go the number of years in which they are so freely giving it out. They had the money because they failed in their bid to get Aaron Judge. So I guess they decided we'll just turn around and see what we can do with it since we have it allocated for a big, big contract. And they went out and signed Correa. What I found interesting is New York Met fans went to bed last night thinking that they had a real solid chance of getting him. All signs pointed late last night to the Mets having the edge. And lo and behold, Steve Cohen and all of his people and all Mets fans in New York woke up to the news that Carlos Correa had signed with the San Francisco Giants. I don't know where this is all going to end. And I agree with the writers that say by the time this contract runs out, that the general manager will be gone. Probably the manager will be gone. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a new owner. You never know about things like that. But I just think it's incredible lunacy, and it's a microcosm, I think, of what the problems are all about relative to the game of baseball. I really do.
You know, another team that was they thought they were going to be in the mix. They thought they had some things outside of just dollars and cents to try and lure Correa was Minnesota. And, this was a team that felt like, hey, look, this is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise your family. Instead of going to out to San Francisco, which certainly has beautiful areas, but they got a lot of issues out there that Minnesota does not. But, I mean, they weren't even in the same galaxy when all is said and done once the Mets and the Giants. And look, I got people that are sending me notes all the time on Twitter, killing me, killing you, about us saying that, there's no such thing as a small market team or a mid-market team. I don't know how anybody in the world can make that argument.
I don't either. I think people like your friend Scott Boras and people like that are the ones that would poo-poo the concept that there are small market teams because it defeats what he's all about. But I don't think there's any question now, and if anybody need a reason to say, yeah, there's a definite difference between the big market teams and the small market teams, this right here is an indication of that. Steve Cohen buys the New York Mets, and he's worth billions of dollars. I think he's considered to be the wealthiest man among all Major League Baseball owners. And he went into that ownership with the idea that I'm going to do everything in my power to see that this ball club is in a position to go to the postseason and win a world championship for New York Mets fans. I don't think there are a lot of owners that can afford to take that position, although you wonder now, with the Giants stepping up 2 or 3 years ago, I don't think the Giants would have even given this a small thought. But apparently a decision has been made within the ownership that we're going to go all out. We had the money because we didn't get Judge. We signed this guy. We brought in a couple of pitchers. And now the proof of the pudding is going to be played out over the course of the 2023 season. If I were a Dodger fan, given what's gone on between the Padres and the Giants, I would be a little bit concerned because they, as you said, they had not really done anything. And obviously those two clubs have gotten better based on the careers of the players that they've signed these multi-million-dollar contracts to. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now between now and the beginning of the baseball season as far as the Dodgers are concerned?
Gosh, I just drew a total blank on what I was getting. Oh, I know. You know, we've talked before about the financial structure of baseball and how it's so vastly different than the other three major sports that have salary caps, et cetera. And we talked about this at length when you were not on the show the other day. And I'm convinced. Tell me if you think I'm on to something here or if I'm wrong. If the owners are going to sit down and one day try and have a serious conversation with the Players Association where you use those two words that generally get them to get up and walk out of the room, salary cap. The one thing that's going to happen, the owners are going to have to open up their books. Because, look, at the end of the day, these are privately held companies. These aren't publicly traded companies. These are privately held companies. And if you're in the Players Association, there is no way on God's green earth that you are going to agree to a salary cap without seeing what's really going on inside the books of these Major League Baseball teams. Do you think that's fair to say?
Nor would I. I wouldn't either. I mean, you know, it really. Be honest now. Let's face facts. It makes you wonder, with the owners adamantly opposing any idea that they would open their books. It makes you wonder, and the only way to put that wonder aside is to have them open their books, let the player union see what the owners have been preaching all this time, and then it would certainly, if it turns out that the owners are right in what they've been saying, then it puts the player union in a tough situation, because now the owners have proven that everything they've said, albeit not having opened their books up until this particular point, and we're using this as an example, the player union, then the ball would be in their court, and I think the fan support would fall heavily on the side of the owners, because they would have proven that everything they've said all along, without opening their books, turns out to be true. But I don't. As long as the owners stand by their decision not to open the books, then I don't see where the player union has any position to take but the one they've taken, quite honestly.
Yeah, because their argument always is, and they're 1,000% correct on this, is that, you know, you look at every single owner that's bought a franchise in the last 10, 15, 25 years, including the Castellini Group, the value of the franchises have gone through the roof. I mean, you buy it for $300 million, all of a sudden it's valued at $1 billion, and that's what they're looking at. They're correct in that assumption. It doesn't mean necessarily, and I'm not saying they aren't, because I don't know. It doesn't mean that they're making a lot of money year in and year out, especially when you're drawing, in the Reds' case, 1.3 million fans into the ballpark.
Well, what I find interesting is people looking at what an owner paid for the team that he owns when he bought it, what he paid for it, and now what the projection is as to what it's worth. And those people will say, well, see, right there is an example of how lucrative and how positive it is to be a Major League Baseball owner, and these guys are screaming poverty. Well, you know what? All that money is on paper. That money doesn't mean a damn thing until they turn around and try to sell the club. Now, if they sell the team, maybe they get the amount of money that the club was said to be worth. But I think that's a poor argument. If you paid $10 for it and it's worth $50, it's worth $50 if you sell it. If you don't sell it, then it ain't worth anything except what it says on paper. I still maintain that, however it can happen, and I don't know that it will ever happen. I don't know where this game goes to walk out of this wilderness of small market versus large market, and teams that can afford to pay the big Correa contracts and the Turner contracts, and teams that can't. I don't know where all this comes to an end. You hear people say there's no middle class. It's all low class and all penthouse class, and maybe it is. I don't know, but I just think, as we talked a couple of weeks ago, I would say without any question, this game has more problems than any of the major sports. And where it will all end up and where it will lead to, I have no idea. I really believe that, I hate to say this, but I think if the one thing that could occur that would open up a lot of people's minds is if you had one or more teams that file for bankruptcy. If that happened, I think all of a sudden the playing field changes a little bit, because you have clubs going under, and I would not be surprised if there were not some teams that were struggling to keep their head above water right now. I really truly believe that.
Well, I can promise you, and we talked about this last week, I can promise you that will happen if this Bally thing falls apart. And I don't know how accurate that is. About on their conference call, the parent company, Sinclair Broadcasting, a couple of weeks ago, saying that Bally's was okay till the end of 2023, technically Diamond Sports, whatever they call it,
right.
the LLC there. But if all of a sudden, we talked about it, if all of a sudden this guaranteed money for these teams is all of a sudden gone overnight, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars you're banking on, that's going to happen. All right, look, we got a couple of people on the chat here that are asking a couple of questions about you. Paul, help me here. Casey, help me here with something called OnlyFans. They want to know if Marty can have an OnlyFans page.
A what?
That's what I'm asking.
The hell is that, Casey?
An OnlyFans page?
It's just a question in the chat.
I think it's a legitimate question. Casey, care to explain?
It's a platform for content creators to use a paywall. So you pay like a dollar to get into their content.
Okay, but I mean, I'm guessing now, hearing you say this, a lot of this is sexual stuff. Is that right?
I would say that this kind of content is not exactly suited for Mr. Marty.
Okay,
Brennaman.
but I'm saying you could make the argument that an OnlyFans content page could be Marty Brennaman giving daily thoughts every single day about baseball, right?
And that's what its initial intent was for.
Okay, I see. Okay, for content.
It was for content.
Okay, well, maybe forget that part of it then, that name. But let's just say, like having a content kind of thing. Can you imagine the money you'd be raking in if all of a sudden you had some paywall up and you could give your thoughts of the day on anything and everything? Have you thought about that?
That's never crossed my mind not one time. See, I don't want to be tied down to do something every day. I mean, the idea of retirement is to be retired. And if I thought I had to get up every morning and stand in front of a telephone like we're doing right now and talking to people and expressing opinions about everything on earth, I'm not interested in that. I truly am not.
Okay,
I appreciate the thought.
All right, well, the other thing, there's some OCD folks out there, and I'm well aware of OCD, but they're sitting here watching you today, and they're noting that the picture directly behind you that says Reds Radio on it is really off center here, and it's bothering a lot of people. Have you noticed that? Do you walk around the room at all and straighten them up?
Look at that.
I don't know. That doesn't look good.
More.
It might be the top one that's actually a little bit off.
How's that look?
That's better.
Is that any better? Some of you
Is that better?
Much better. Said
good.
Everybody who was really uptight about that, they're all good now. They're all good now.
They need to get a life if all they're worried about is the damn picture behind me.
Well, I mean, that's a big league office you got down there and a big league room and a basement.
I got a lot of pictures here. There's a lot of stuff in this room where the people come in to straighten it up and clean it up, and inevitably frames get turned, and it bothers me too. And I want to take back what I just said. I apologize to that person, and I hope it looks better now, and they will have a better day because I straightened the frame out.
Amen. Hey, we're all about having a better day.
Let me make one point before we close.
Yes.
God bless the memory of Mike Leach.
Yep.
I was a big fan. I've done a lot of reading about Mike Leach, things I did not know in light of the tragic passing of the Mississippi State coach. The guy was really something. And I know there's a cry going out now that he gets in the College Football Hall of Fame, and they have a stupid rule that they don't consider any coach if he has less than a 600 winning percentage. And he is at 596. Had he won one more game, he would have been at 600 winning percentage.
Yep.
And if that's the only thing that keeps Mike Leach out of the Football Hall of Fame, then those people ought to be condemned for a stupid, stupid rule. I think you have to take a guy's body of work. I mean, he was the author of the air raid offense. Interestingly enough, he was an assistant coach, offensive coordinator in the late 90s at the University of Kentucky under Hal Mumme. And Hal Mumme had a lot to do with the air raid offense too, but Leach was the guy looked upon as being the guy that had the most to do with it. I think it's a sad thing. He had a great family. He'd been married forever, and I just hope that he gets his just due, even though now he will not be around to enjoy it.
I read that same thing you did about the stipulation in there about winning percentage. And, the first thing I thought of, and this wasn't the case with Paul Brown. He was only at Ohio State for a short period of time, won a national championship, all that kind of thing. But you look at the programs that Leach took over, they were all a disaster, right? I mean, he starts at Texas Tech, disaster, gets them in the right direction. Washington State, I think I read yesterday, the year before he got there, had won 2 games each of the 3 prior years per season. And then he comes to Mississippi State, which you and I both know. I mean, in that Southeastern Conference, in that Western half, you've got Alabama, LSU, and then pretty much everybody else forever and a day. And all of a sudden, he's built that thing up. And I got to thinking about, how innovative he was. He learned under Mumme when he was at Kentucky. And the offense and all that kind of thing. But I got to thinking, say Paul Brown had stayed in college, right? But he was a guy that came up with the idea about using the tight end as a receiver. He was a guy that came up with the idea, although it was never implemented when he was there or when he was in the pros, about having a headset or a microphone or an earpiece inside the quarterback's helmet to relay and call all the plays. I mean, innovative, never ended, right? And to think that you got to win 60% to get in the Hall of Fame is just, you'd like to think they're going to change that.
I hope it's a stupid rule. A real stupid rule.
All right. Well, Dad, we thank you very much. I'm getting lit up on the chat because I didn't know what this thing was, so forgive me. I wasn't trying to embarrass anybody.
I gotta be honest, Tom. I thought you were doing a bit. This is even better.
A bit?
We thought you were joking.
We thought you were joking around.
Somebody asked Sharon, who loves Tracy Jones, was the one who brought it up in the chat.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Now, Sharon strikes me as somebody that would be into OnlyFans.
She probably is on OnlyFans.
Sharon probably is on OnlyFans.
I'm not going to say that about Sharon. She's a loyal follower of the program, and we're grateful she's here, and she's got something for Tracy Jones and obviously has something for Marty Brennaman. So, Dad, have a great day.
All right, bud.
All
right. Take care.
All right. Be well.
See you, Marty.
I mean, this thing's blowing up.
I mean, Tom, somebody will clip that, and that will go all over, and it'll be hilarious.
Today's show's just been interesting.
Today's been an all-timer.
Well, we're having some technical issues and everything. Sir Boy Wonder says, this is the best thing for teaching Tom. Boom.
Well, speaking of, we could do our Teaching Tom segment if you want.
Why don't we take a break? Emperor Starscream wanted Marty to tell us the worst thing Tom did as a kid. This show would last from now until February.
Well, we save that for after football season.
Yeah, you might be right. We'll be dying on the vine here. That's for sure. But look, we're gaining viewers every single day. We're grateful for it. We appreciate all of you and joining us in the chat and whether you're joining us here live. And it's not easy for a lot of people to be on here live because, look, most people are working right now or going to school, whatever the case may be. So we're grateful for those of you that are here and continue to join us on a regular basis. And we have lots to talk about today. We can talk a lot about the Bengals. We're going to talk more about Joe Burrow and winning the Heisman. This is the first ever matchup between Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. And it was a fascinating article. And again, I don't get paid by these guys. In fact, I pay them to be a subscriber. But on The Athletic today, there is a phenomenal article written about people that have spent time around both Tom Brady and Joe Burrow and what makes them so great and what makes them so similar. Burrow aspiring to greatness, a greatness like Tom Brady. I'm not sure if anybody can achieve that. But look, when Tom Brady was in his third year as a starter, right? And the only reason he got a chance to play is because Drew Bledsoe got hurt. No one was saying this guy was going to win, almost 2 handfuls worth of Super Bowl rings and be considered the greatest quarterback of all time. Who knows where we're talking about Burrow, where he sits in another 8, 10, 12 years from now if he continues to play and, good Lord willing, stays healthy. We're back with more right after this.
So before you leave, Tom, we're actually going to start doing something new for our breaks.
Really? What are we doing?
You're going to throw it to the ham and eggers is what you're going to do.
So we have so you can step out. I'm not kicking you out.
Yeah,
but
just
we know you.
Toss it to us. How about that?
Toss it to us while you step out.
So I'm going to toss it to the ham and eggers.
Exactly.
It's that time of the show, the ham and eggers. These guys are great. Trust me, I would know. I introduce all the best segments.
All right, Casey, what do you got for me?
All right, so this new segment is kind of a way that we can try to
yeah.
So we're trying to avoid that from happening. So what's supposed to happen is he's supposed to step out in the middle of that, and we are just going to sit here and talk for a couple minutes about gambling topics, about soccer, because we don't normally talk about soccer on this program. But
you're a big soccer guy, Casey.
And it's more just to keep the viewers engaged, because every time we go to a break, it just seems like you all want to leave. So we're trying to keep your attention.
If there's one thing we know, it's that audience retention is the key to a successful show. So what we're trying to do here is, while Tom steps out for just a minute, comes back in, usually we run about a 4 or 5 minute break. We're not going to do that every time now, so we have something to talk about. First thing we have to talk about today, Casey, is what?
I'll give you an option.
Okay, I love options.
Do you want to talk Bengals gambling topics, or do you want to talk about the bowl games coming up?
Let's talk about the Bengals.
Okay, let's talk about the Bengals, right?
Okay.
Tom Brady has been doing absolutely terrible, and the Bengals are on fire. And when I look at a 3.5-point spread,
yes,
and I look at the wins and losses of both teams,
sure,
I actually think this is a pretty appropriate spread. I actually think that 3.5 points is appropriate for the game, but it's also not really in the Bengals' favor, honestly, because they like to keep games close most of the time. That's usually been the trend. I know that's not the trend as of late, especially with the last win. But you look at Kansas City, that's a 1-score game. Tennessee's a 1-score game. Pittsburgh was a 1-score game. Tampa Bay's defense is pretty darn good. I know they haven't been playing up to par as of late, but there's just something deep down in me that says 3.5-point spread, I might be taking Tampa on this one.
Okay, so one of the things that you have to keep in mind with this one is that the Bengals are 18-3 in their last 21 games against the spread. The Bengals are the best team over the last 21 games in the entire NFL against the spread. 18-3, including that entire playoff run last year, as y'all remember. The one thing I will say about this Bengals game now, as you get into Wednesday, you start to get more money flowing in on the game. We'll do all of our picks on Friday. But the Bengals right now are receiving 82% of the bets and 77% of the money, which basically means that everybody is on your line of thinking, Casey.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot both ways.
I'm just looking at our info here, and it's looking like it might be a Buccaneer pick. I don't know.
Before we don't say that. Before we kick it back to Tom here, we have some people in the chat, Casey, that want to know if you'll shave your head live.
Shave my head live?
Yeah, during this segment. Will you shave your head live?
Where Where did we get this from?
Why
do people want to? Sharon wants to know. Shave Casey's head live. It's interesting. I mean, it's already butchered. I mean, let's just go all the way, right?
I don't know. Tom, what do you think? Do you think we shave Casey's head live?
Why in the world would we shave his head live?
Well, I don't know.
My dad did it a number of years ago, and I think he would tell you of all of his I've always said, put it this way, I've always said when people ask about me, what do you remember most about, your dad, this and that and everything else, and whether it was growing up or whether it was calls in the booth or him helping me with my career and all those kinds of things, I've always said by far and away the number one thing that I'll always remember was the night he shaved his head. He made good on a bet about the Reds would not win. They were incapable of winning 10 games in a row. He made the bet with a former coach, Chris Spire, said he would shave his head if they did win 10 in a row, and they did. And they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for a charity here in town.
That's awesome.
And that was incredible, being on the field that night. Why am I drawing a blank on the Dragonfly? Kids with cancer, and there were a number of kids who had, they were going through chemotherapy or radiation. They were on the field, came up and braced my dad. I mean, I get worked up and very emotional just even thinking about that whole scene on the field that night. I was down there with my wife and kids after the game, a sellout crowd. Even guys like Charlie Sheen, whether you like the guy, don't like the guy, it's irrelevant. He found out about it. He flew in for the game. I think he ponied up $150,000 for the charity that night because he was there for his dad's birthday. Martin Sheen had brought him in for the game that night. It was unbelievable. But why are we talking about shaving Casey's head?
I don't know. Somebody brought
what
it
the
up.
hell's that all? I mean, well, why? What's the purpose for it? Now, if he wants to do it for charity,
I do have a
that's
question.
A different ballgame.
I do have a question. Sharon, do you think I'd look more attractive with a bald head?
Oh, no.
A nice shiny head?
Sharon is she said that was in 2010. I think she might be right on that, 2010. I don't know why we do it unless we're going to do it for charity. And with all these people we have watching the show now on a daily basis and part of the chat, Sharon likes Charlie Sheen.
Oh, yeah.
Sharon's a piece of work, man.
Yeah, that might be timeout worthy. I don't know.
All right. Well, we also have something else for you, Tom.
What do we have today? This is all new and fun. You show up to work and you guys have been busting your tail after hours. What do we got today?
Which one are we doing?
Let's teach Tom something today.
Teaching Tom, we call it, correct?
Absolutely.
And yesterday was clapback?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, clapback. What do we have today? There's one of those that goes around on the internet.
Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty.
Joe what? Is that the word? Is that the hip word? I don't even know what to say. What? When a viewer tells me that I'm trying to be hip and I'm not as hip as I think I am, that hurts.
All right, Tom, so I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Before we teach you what slaps means, what do you think it means?
I remember getting slapped is not the accurate word. So, I mean, there was a time you were raising your kids, you screwed up, you got a spanking. I mean, I got swats in a public school. That's the truth. Got a number of detentions, was playing on the basketball team, and you had a choice. You either honor your whatever they're called, detentions, which means you had to stick around for 45 minutes or something after school and just sit around in a room. And you couldn't do that if you were on the basketball team with practice every day. So after school, you had a choice of trading in 3 detentions for a SWAT. So that's the first thing I thought of when you said slap, because nobody ever, thank God never got slapped. So what are we learning today?
All right, well, Tom, that one couldn't have been farther from what this actually is referring to, which is why we're teaching you about it today. It's a slang to be excellent or amazing. So you could say that this new Drake song slaps, or as Thomas points out in the chat, this show slaps.
Really? I like that word.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
slaps. Okay. So this show, or the quote you have there, that new Drake song, slaps. Yeah. Slang verb meaning to be excellent or amazing. That's what you guys are.
We slap?
Yeah, you guys definitely. I mean, you were or a slappy, depending on how you want to put it. No, but I mean, you did amazing work here today. We were having some technical issues. You got everything together. You helped me out from, Anonymous says Will Smith slaps.
That is true.
That's true.
Okay. Pauni Water slaps.
There you go.
That's a good one.
That's a great one.
That's a good one. Sir Boy Wonder says Thom Brennaman slap. Thank you.
Tom, do you want to do the ad read real quick for Pauni?
You know what? It's fun. I mean, I got the bottle here all the time. And, again, I talk these guys up because I just can't begin to tell you how much I'm rooting for these guys. And I say rooting for them because they just opened this thing across the street. If you're still drinking regular water, and I'm not talking about out of the tap, but that alkaline water has been shown to have superior hydration benefits versus regular water. And this is in clinical studies, and these guys are scientists, former Procter & Gamble guys that started Pauni Water across the street here in Hamilton. This new alkaline water that's out, premium alkaline water, is called Pauni. And it's fantastic. Pauni uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that many other bottled water brands are using. The result is a healthy alkaline water that is the best tasting water in the world. Now, here's how you spell it. You can go to Pauni, P-A-H-H-N-I, water.com. That's P-A-H-H water.com. And you can see where you can buy this great tasting water at a store near you. Boy, we've got some demented people on this chat. Really demented. What made you guys come up, by the way, with the Donald Trump themed introduction to that?
That's a Tracy question.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were just sent to play that, so that's what we came up with. We also have something else for you today, Tom.
What else do we have today? Boy, this is like a Christmas morning.
Let's roll it. Let's do it. This is more of a not really a segment necessarily, but we're gonna put this up here. So you have $10.
Can everybody read this that's at home? Can everybody see this? All right, explain to me you have $10 to build your team.
Yes.
Yep.
Right? And you go down and guys have a value and you can see the names. And if you had $10, how would you build the team? Okay. Why don't you guys, are we having a problem here? No. All right, why don't you guys tell me, if all of you can see it at home, and we'll just keep this up here so everybody kind of knows where we are with this, okay?
Okay.
All right. So go ahead and you guys start. You got $10. These are Bengals players, all with a value from $1. That's Andy Dalton, Nicky Woods, Tyler Eifert, Tyler Boyd. $2, Kenny Anderson, Rudy Johnson, Peter Warrick, Carl Pickens. $3, Carson Palmer, the great Pete Johnson, a Buckeye. Chris Collinsworth, TJ Houshmandzadeh. $4, Boomer, Mixon, AJ T. $5, Joe Burrow, Corey Dillon, Jamar Chase, Chad Johnson. Now, what you're saying is in this game, you have to have one of the 5 categories?
Yep, you have to have a quarterback, a running back, and 2 receivers.
Okay. Casey, you start us off.
So I was actually the one that made this graphic, and I had a really tough time actually picking out a team. I always wanted to pick Joe Burrow every time because I love him so much, but that really limits your choices. So I'm going to throw a curveball. I'm going to start with Carson Palmer at $3.
Okay.
Then going with Icky Woods. So now I'm at $4. I think these two, solid. Excellent. Then I'm going Jamar Chase. That puts me at $9. And now that leaves only Tyler Boyd left. And I think that's pretty solid. I think that's a solid team. I think if you were to ask me who would be a better receiver fit, Chad Johnson or Jamar Chase with Carson Palmer back in the day, I might have actually told you Jamar Chase is better than Chad Johnson because Carson had an arm. He would just rocket it and bomb it to people. And that is Chase's play style. Chad, he would just get open with his feet. I know he was an all-time great receiver for the Bengals, but Chase is more physical. I mean, just look at how he did with TJ Hushmanzada. And TJ is a little bit slower. He's more, I guess he's bigger, more physical than Chase, but he did just as well in certain years with Chad alongside him. So that would be my team. Carson, Icky. I think it's really tough when the running backs, really. It really is. But I think Icky has to be it for me if you're going to go with Carson because Chase and Boyd.
I got to tell you, the one guy who's missing from this list who I still maintain, and there are guys with better stats, but I still maintain is the greatest running back in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals franchise is James Brooks.
James Brooks.
James Brooks was the best running back all around, running and receiving, this franchise has ever had. He was better than Dillon. He was better than Mixon. He was better than Pete Johnson. He was better than Rudy Johnson. And he was far more well-rounded than Icky Woods. James Brooks was a freaking stud. Great player. Nonetheless, all right. Paul, you're next up.
So I think I can make
This is a nice little game here. I like this.
Yeah, I think I can make a pretty decent team here for like $6. If I go with Ken Anderson, Icky Woods.
Ken Anderson, Icky Woods.
That's
okay.
only $3
That's $3
right there.
Okay, that's a good start.
And I go Jamar Chase.
Yep.
Now you're at 8.
And Tyler Boyd. I don't even need. You keep the dollar.
Yep.
I'll go $9.
I
think that's a contending team right there.
I hear you. All right, I'm going Kenny Anderson. Among the most accurate passers in the history of football. And as a younger man could run. Kenny Anderson. I'm going with Jamar Chase. So that gets me to 7. I'm going with Boyd, gets me to 8. And I'm taking Rudy Johnson, it gets me to 10.
I like that team too.
Man.
But how difficult is this game, honestly? Because everyone wants to take Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, but that you can't. It's $10 right there. I really like this. I might make a couple more of these along down the road here, but we did post this on our Chatterbox account on Twitter. If any of y'all want to play, just go back and scroll through and find the post and tell us what you think. But yeah, $10 to build your team, your Bengals team. I like your guys' choices. A lot of Ken Andersons. I was kind of surprised with that. I thought maybe we would get a little bit more Carson, but good.
Just
good
by
stuff,
the
guys.
way, James Brooks, for those that don't remember, okay? This guy was a first-round draft pick in 81 by the San Diego Chargers. He played 3 years out there. He comes to the Bengals in 84. He was only here for 6 seasons. He went to 4 Pro Bowls with the Bengals, 4 of them. By the time he left the Bengals, he was the team's all-time leading rusher. Number 1 all-time. Now, not a very old franchise. It was later broken by Corey Dillon. He is still to this day, as years have gone by and it's become a passing-oriented game, he is still among the top 15 all-time leading receivers in Bengals history. Almost 300 receptions for over 3,000 yards. By the time that he had retired, he had 8,000 rushing yards, almost 400 receptions for 3,700 yards. He had over 2,800 kickoff return yards, had scored 79 touchdowns. between 1968 and 2005, Brooks was the only member of the 30-30 club. 30 rushing, 30 receiving touchdowns. And to this day is one of only 7 players.
Wow.
This guy, I'm telling you. And he was not a big guy. He was 5'9", 5'10", weighed 180 pounds. And he was unbelievable. And split time in the backfield through the years with the Bengals. He shared time with Larry Kinnebrew. He shared time with Ickey Woods. I mean, this guy never missed games. Just an absolute stud on the field.
Yeah, maybe I should have put him on there. I hands up, did not know who he was. I learned something new today about my fandom.
Yeah, if you're going to be a Bengals fan, you have to know who James Brooks is. I'm telling you. He is without a doubt the best all-around running back, and even the numbers back it up. He's the best all-around running back by a galaxy that the Bengals have ever had in the history of the franchise.
And you get him for free on this chart.
And you get him for free. There you go. You get a bonus pick.
Boom.
Oh.
James Brooks. For nothing.
Wait.
For nothing.
James Brooks?
Leader of men.
No, he's
No.
He's
a real man.
A real man.
Thom, leave these 2 young knee slappers alone. Tell you another guy that's not on that list. So we didn't put any tight ends on. Yeah, you put some tight ends on there.
I put Tyler Eifert
in the
on
receiver
there.
category
Yeah.
because I'll tell you right now, the 2 best tight ends all time by far in the history of the Bengals, by far, are Dan Ross and Bob Trumpy. That's a guy, Trump, we got to get on the show one day. He still lives here in town. You talk about a guy that has some stories now. I mean, this guy played for Paul Brown and used to go toe-to-toe with Paul Brown all the time. Many don't remember this about Paul Brown. Trumpy was the first tight end in the history of the National Football League because of Paul Brown and his innovative offensive mind, where he got off being right there on the front with on the offensive front line with the center, the guards, and the tackles. They would split the tight end off the tackle rather than lining up next to the tackle. Trumpy was the first guy to do it because of Paul Brown. You learn something every day here on Off the Bench, fellas. You know that?
Yeah, we need a Thom teaching segment, honestly.
Thom teaches the ham and eggers.
Everett says, Thom reminds me of Ron Burgundy. Is that a compliment? Is that a compliment, Everett? Everett, answer. Go ahead and answer. Is that a compliment? I'm waiting. Bueller. Of course it is, he says. Thank you. All right. Fellas, what's on your mind here today? Today is normally the day of the big interview, but it fell through the cracks today. Will remain nameless. So we will gather some steam again looking ahead to next week. The Cincinnati Kid says, I'm Ron Burgundy. And what is so funny about that? Am I missing something? Is this another one of those where Thom should know? Paul, are you there?
He's gone. He's
oh, my God. Look at this guy.
Over.
Look at this guy. Paul, what is the problem?
Is it time to pull up the clip, maybe? I can't do that because copyright, but...
No.
Pull up the clip of what? Ron Burgundy? Paul, what is it that's so funny, please? This is an inside joke, and this is Broadcasting 101. You can't leave people outside looking in. Oh, my God,
that was just unbelievable.
Okay, what is it?
He goes, I'm Ron Burgundy in the chat. It's in the chat. Have you ever seen the movie Anchorman?
Yeah, been a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but did Thom read something?
No, it's just Just the way that rolled off the tongue was exactly.
Trace
like
Fowler, the boss, is saying just run the clip.
Just
Forget
run the clip.
What is it?
Let me find it real quick,
right,
and
let's find it.
we'll pull it
That
up.
was unbelievable. That was an all-time moment, Tom. Thank you for doing that.
I
That
have
just
no
made-
idea what
that
the
just
hell you're
made my
talking
day.
about here.
That just made my day.
What did I
Maybe I'm the only one that finds it funny, but that was unbelievable.
It's an inside joke that everyone is in on except for Thom Brennaman, is what I'm being told.
No.
That I am very oblivious. And you know what? I am oblivious. I'm completely oblivious when it comes to certain things. And
Tom,
one of them, movies, entertainment, social media, I'm not in tune with any of it. None of it. Never will be. No interest in being.
We're pulling it up. Hang on, Tom. I think.
I can't wait to see this. I'm assuming this is a Ron Burgundy clip.
Yes, it is
Okay.
definitely a Ron Burgundy clip.
All right, let's see it.
All right.
Let's see it.
Throw it up there.
Well, that's going to do it for all of us here at Channel 4 News. You stay classy, San Diego. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Damn it! Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter? For the last time, anything you put on that prompter, Burgundy will read.
So I assume that is playing off of the chat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So somebody writes in, "I'm Ron Burgundy," and you read it. I'm Ron Burgundy.
Okay. There we go. There we go. Cincinnati Kid says that was great. We are all belly laughing.
Oh man.
If we're not a sports talk show, we're definitely an entertainment show.
This is unbelievable, Tom. That was one of your better
Listen,
moments on the show.
this is because, you can sit around, and I've always felt for guys like, they have great jobs. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people in this world would kill to have the job that Lance McAllister or Mo Egger or those guys have, doing a daily talk show in a market like Cincinnati. But there are a lot of times, man, where I'm jumping in the car, running around back when I was announcing games, or even now, and it's just sports. And I know that they're doing a sports talk show, and they both do a phenomenal job, and they're good guys on top of that, so you root for them. I've known Lance for a long time, back when he was working in Chicago, and man, he's coming up with creative ideas, a lot like you guys are right now, on the whole deal, and Mo is dialed in inside and out, knows his stuff. But to sit around and talk about analytics in baseball when you're in the middle of July and talking about a guy's war, would you rather talk about that or Ron Burgundy?
I know what I would say.
Analytics and war?
From a guy that knows nothing about baseball, I'm not so sure.
Would you rather sit around, and look, I'm not saying I know the answer to this, because we're in the middle of football, and football is everything. We know that. The king of the jungle. We could sit around here 365 days a year, even in the middle of the offseason from football, and talk about football, and people want to hear about football. And we try to do in the monologue some of the topics that are out there, whether it's the Cowboys' right tackle, Terrence Steele, out for the year, Kyler Murray, everything going on with the Bengals and yesterday and James Rapine. But there has to come a point in time when we're sitting here for 2 hours. You got to have a little fun.
Of course.
At my expense.
At all of our expenses.
No, it's actually pretty much on me.
I hope the people have enjoyed today's show as much as I have, because for the speed bumps that today's show has run into, this has been an all-time performance by the Off the Bench crew today. This has been great.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. All right, let's get into the Burrow Brady matchup.
Yes.
Yep.
It's the first time it's ever happened.
Probably be the only time.
Well, that remains to be seen. Who knows what's going to happen moving forward. We know that Burrow is not going anywhere, and good Lord willing, he stays healthy and he's on the field. Brady has decisions to make again at the end of this year. He's already been guaranteed a contract as a broadcaster by Fox once he walks off the playing field, but I think we all agree. Tom Brady's a football player. He might be a lot of other things, but at the very core, and this is where I think you start the whole Brady thing. When you get to their core, and I got to tell you, Caleb Williams, I heard and I saw a lot of that in him in the Heisman speech the other night, which I recommended all of you, if you have a chance, to go back and watch. It's unbelievable. This kid, he's a football player. Yeah, you can do commercials. Yeah, you can have your TB12 website. You can have your diet. You can have your workouts. You can do this, that, everything else. But fellas, Burrow and Brady, at the very core of their existence, outside of their faith or their family or whatever it is, they are football players. And every day they show up to work, whether Brady's in his 22nd year or Burrow's in his 4th year. They come to work during the season, in the off-season. Everything centers on being a great quarterback. And that's what you want when you're making the decision, as you brought up yesterday. And I don't know anything about Lamar Jackson. I don't know the guy. I've never been around. I don't know Burrow either. But I'm not there in Baltimore reading articles about him every day and his makeup and all. I know he's a hell of a player. But when you're the owner of a team or the general manager of a team, there are only a handful of cats out there where they're football players. And this is what they want to do, and they want to be the very best at it. And if there's a role model for Burrow, and I think he got this long before Tom Brady came around, but I think to the core, and maybe they'll ask him about it this week, that has to be the guy you look up to more than any other quarterback in the National Football League, if you're Joe Burrow or anybody else, is Tom Brady.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say Joe Burrow, he plays a lot like Tom Brady. In ways like he just always makes the clutch throws, very accurate, makes small adjustments in the pocket, very minute, detailed sort of guy. Joe has already stated, though, before, like, some of his inspiration comes from, like, Drew Brees. And Drew Brees is pretty much a football guy, too. I mean, he was just – I mean, he sacrificed his body for the game. All those guys do. But when we look at this matchup, this is going to be something that we're going to look back on 10 years from now. I really do think that. I really think people will go, that was the moment, that was the torch being passed down, or that was the moment where two great players going at it one last time, or, you know, just – because Joe Burrow right now is on a trajectory. He's on a path right now to where if he continues to do this for 5 to 10 years, I mean, he's going to be up there with the greats. He will be. If he does this for long enough, if he's healthy and whatever. And we're going to compare him to Tom Brady. We're going to compare him to Peyton Manning. We're going to compare him to whoever, Drew Brees, name off a random quarterback. So, to me, this game means a lot.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Don't you think that you could make the same argument as we sit here today about Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen? Not just Burrow. And we can get into the whole debate about who's the MVP and who's a better player. And, look, nobody's going to win that argument or nobody's going to lose that argument. But for Patrick Mahomes especially, because, look, part of being the next Brady is winning like Brady. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, you have all the stats in the world. I mean, I love Drew Brees. Drew Brees was a phenomenal quarterback. And you talk about a football player. There's another guy. There's a reason why he was what he was. He was all about being a football player and getting better and getting through the shoulder injury in San Diego when they told him to beat it. Miami was thinking about signing him. They didn't sign him. Ends up in New Orleans, one of the top 5 quarterbacks statistically in the history of the game. But it's all about winning. And right now, in a short body of work, Mahomes has the edge over Burrow in that regard. Been to, 3 Super Bowls or 2? Won one, lost one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I would say, because I can already hear Trace beating down the door on this topic, we need to still see more from Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. yeah, they're on a trajectory to where they could be something great. But that's Joe Burrow has a disadvantage where he was out for most of his, at least half of his rookie year. He's only played one full season ever, so you can't really judge his wins and losses just yet. I mean, Mahomes has got, what, 3 or 4 years on Burrow? 3?
Yeah.
I think 3. So just what I'm saying is the trajectory of Mahomes, who's already been to a Super Bowl, Burrow,
Two Super Bowls.
Two. I'm sorry, 2. Let me correct myself. And then Burrow, who's already been to 1. Josh Allen, to me, has not been to 1. He's not even really been close to 1. Well, no, that's not right. He was in a championship game 1 time. But to me, he needs to win a big game to get to the Super Bowl to really be put in the same conversation. I have more disdain for the Josh Allen praise than I do the Patrick Mahomes praise.
I don't need to see any more from Pat Mahomes. I don't, personally.
Patrick Mahomes is in his 5th year as a starter.
Yeah.
His first year in the league, he only played 1 game. Starting at 18, he took over as a starter. His team goes 12-4.
Yep.
The next year they go 11-3. The next year they go 14-1. The next year they go 12-5. And this year he's 10-3. Patrick Mahomes is a starting quarterback in the NFL is 60-16.
Yeah.
That's winning.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
And that was the only point I'm making about Brady is ultimately if you're going to be compared to Brady, one day, which you suggested, correct me if I'm wrong.
One day.
One day.
One of those guys.
If you're
going to
be compared to Brady, a top 2 or 3, maybe 1 for me, but for some others, they get more wrapped up in passing yards and touchdowns and all this kind of stuff. For me, it's are you winning, are you losing? Okay? It's winning. And right now, if you just looked at the first 3 years as a starter in the NFL, now I know Burrow took over a terrible team, right?
Right.
And in his first year gets hurt, second year they go to the Super Bowl. Here we are in year 3, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Mahomes' first 3 years, now he took over a decent team. Alex Smith was a quarterback. Kansas City went to the playoffs, but they got drilled in the playoffs.
A decent team?
They got beat in the first round. And,
I know, but
I mean, they were okay. But I'm saying when he took over, they go 12-4, 11-3, and 14-1, playing 2 Super Bowls and win 1. His first 3 years as a starter. So he's in the conversation. I think Burrow's a better player, but he's in the conversation. But back to Brady.
Yeah,
Paul,
let's
you were
get back
starting
on
to
track
say.
here.
Yeah, I just think I don't need to see any more from Patrick Mahomes. I've seen enough from him to know where I'm at. And the other thing, too, with Patrick Mahomes is when you get to the end of somebody's career, when you're evaluating somebody like Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, and you get to the end and you say, oh, he's had such a great career. He's had such a great career. Look at Ken Anderson. He's had such a great career, but did he win the Super Bowl, right? Did he win the Super Bowl? Is that the one thing that you're going to try and put somebody over the top? Did he win the big one? Look
Phil
at
Simms.
Look in baseball. Look at Mike Trout. Look at Shohei Ohtani. 2 of the best players. Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani might go down as 2 of the top 3 baseball players of all time in the entire sport, and they may never even reach the postseason. And then you're going to be sitting there thinking to yourself, well, okay, well, did they make the postseason? The Super Bowl? Do they have a championship? Football, it's a little different, especially as a quarterback. You have a little more impact on the team, in my opinion, obviously. And Mahomes has the Super Bowl. Now, how many he wins, that just adds to his legacy. On the flip side, though, there's Josh Allen and Joe Burrow who do need to win one. And they're young. They got plenty of time. They got 15 years to figure this thing out. So when you're looking at Burrow versus Brady and you talk about a torch passing, I do think that there is an element to that where if Joe Burrow wins this game on Sunday and Tom Brady doesn't play particularly well and you see this kind of changing of the guard, because you thought you were going to see that in the Super Bowl with the wasn't it the Bucs that beat the Chiefs?
Yep.
You kind of thought you were going to you kind of that was Tom Brady's Bucs, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
I just want to make sure I was remembering.
you're
that
right. You're right.
You kind of thought that Super Bowl might be the passing of the – you thought that might be that moment, right? That Mahomes was going to beat Brady in the Super Bowl, and that was going to put Pat Mahomes on the trajectory to win more Super Bowls than Thom over the course of his career. But then all of a sudden, Thom wins his 7th. Mahomes is still stuck at 1, and you're thinking there's no way Pat Mahomes is going to win 7 more Super Bowls and pass Tom Brady in that point, especially with how tough the AFC is. So, to me, when you look at a passing of the torch moment in a regular season, I don't know if that's this, but it, I guess, could be when you look at how Burrow could perform on Sunday. Because it wasn't in that Super Bowl, and everybody had kind of set it up like that.
Yeah, and maybe that's not fair of me to say for Tom Brady's sake, like to pass the torch in a regular season game. That's not a fair assessment on what's going to happen in the future. I just find this game as a fan, I should preface this is as a fan, not as an analyst of the game. As a fan, I feel like this is an important game regardless because you're going up against the greatest of all time. Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. And Joe Burrow has garnered comparisons to Tom Brady, whether he's liked it or not. And we can analyze and look at his game. They play very similarly. I feel like if Joe Burrow does really well, performs well, wins the game, and Tom Brady acknowledges him, that's another thing is, acknowledging is one thing. Or is a thing. I feel like that's going to be a really important milestone in the Bengals' road to the future. I mean, it could be a pivotal moment that we look at on history and say, do you remember when Joe Burrow beat Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, or what we thought was the greatest of all time? And the same really could be said for Patrick Mahomes. He just beat him earlier this year.
So Tom Brady's first 3 years in the NFL as a starter.
Yeah.
11-3 Super Bowl win.
Yep.
First year out of the gate. Next year, go 9-7, get to the playoffs, get beat. Third year in the league, 14-2 Super Bowl win. That's big leaguer.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the trajectory that Joe Burrow's on, I mean, if we take away the rookie season, went to 1 Super Bowl and lost. And now we're on to the second full season, as long as he stays healthy. And he's on a path to at least make the playoffs. He's got a 99% chance. Pretty sure he locks it up if he wins this week.
Do the Bengals clinch a berth if they win this week?
Pretty darn close. It won't be 98%. It'll be 99%.
All right.
I think they would have to lose out at this point if they don't make it. And they still would have a chance to make it if they lose out.
Okay.
So regardless, let's get back to the actual game itself and the matchups there, because I think that's more important to talk about than what this game truly means to the Bengals. I think we all know a matchup with the GOAT for Joe Burrow. It's probably going to be the only one that we see. Lots of signs pointing towards Tom Brady maybe hanging it up or, just the schedule not realigning again. They're in different conferences. They already played the NFC South once.
Yeah, I think there's a legitimate chance. Even if you finish with a crummy record, if you're a first-place team, and if Tampa Bay ends up a first-place team like they were last year, like the Bengals were last year, you play a first-place schedule. I don't know what the rollover is next year. As far as, it's weird how those games work out, how certain first-place teams end up playing, the first-place team from another division, even though they aren't playing that division for the year. Like the Buccaneers had to play the San Francisco 49ers, right? And the Bengals are playing the Bills. I think, didn't the Bills play the Buccaneers this year too? I mean, the Buccaneers schedule has just been, it's been brutal outside of a terrible division. But, you look at the whole injury thing, and we had James Rapine on yesterday. There are a lot of factors here. I think the easiest thing in the world for all of us to say, and Paul, tell me, and Casey, if you guys agree, the easiest thing in the world to say is just watch the two teams this year. And this game, it's easy to come to the conclusion that this game should be an absolute massacre. It should be. The Bengals are a much better team than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But as we know, and we see it every week in the NFL, That's not always the way things play out. In fact, there have been, countless times this year where you just said, this team's going to kill that team, and they either barely win or they get beat. But you've got a couple of factors here. All the injuries to the Bengals. As we talked to James Rapine yesterday, no way Hendrickson's going to play. He's just not going to play. They're not going to take the chance, nor should they, with a broken wrist. Yeah, you can put a cast on it, but why? Right? Some other guy's got to go play. Osai, is he going to have to wear a sling? He's a guy replacing Hendrickson. And everybody else in the defense looks like they're okay, and this defense has been lights out. But now we get to the offensive side of the ball. We all know about Boyd. Sounds like he's not going to play. Okay, it might be a week, might be 2.
That was a weird injury, by the way.
It is a weird injury, and we'll see how long. Look, Tyler Boyd's a gamer, and I said yesterday, and people don't want to talk about this, but it's reality. Believe me when I tell you, if it was a playoff game, they'd shoot it up. He'd be in there tomorrow.
It's considered it's not a bone contusion or a bone compound.
Dislocated finger is what it was.
But it broke through the skin?
Well, again, that was, I think James had said, I asked him about it because I thought I heard it somewhere on the radio. He said that's what Dave Lapham said. And so I've not seen a confirmation of that one way or the other. But you then throw in T. Higgins, okay? And no Hayden Hurst. He's not going to play again this week. So while the Bengals' depth has shown its strength on both sides of the football this year, and even in special teams with Drew Chrisman taking over for Kevin Huber and a new long snapper and Chrisman a new holder, their depth has shown up. But, Paul, this is no walk in the park going down there when you know that Tom Brady and Godwin and Evans and all these guys are still playing for the team you're playing in their stadium.
Well, how many times have I sat up here through the course of this season and said to you, Tom, as we pick these games, well, I don't want to pick against the Bucs because I don't want to pick against the greatest quarterback of all time. Well, they might figure it out. And there have been weeks where it looks like maybe they figured it out and they've done just enough to win. There have also been weeks where, well, they haven't figured it out. Look at last week. They just did not figure it out. And could at any point this Bucs team go out there and put up a performance at home where they beat a Bengals team that's riding this high right now? And it's the NFL. How many times do we say over and over and over and over? It's the NFL. Anybody can win on any given week. And now you're going down to Tampa. You're playing back-to-back road games. It's the first of 2. You're going to play 2 games in 6 days. And if you're the Bengals as a 2.5, 3.5-point road favorite against the greatest quarterback of all time, eventually the Bengals are going to – you think – I don't want to say let me think about it. This is a game to me that you'd really like to see the Bengals win as a statement more so than, well, it's great for their playoff chances. It's great for the prospects of the rest of the season. Keep the winning streak going. All that. That's all fine and good. That's all great. But to me, this is a game for the Bengals that makes more of a statement going down there against Tom Brady and this team that you feel like, everybody's this narrative. Are they going to be able to turn it around at any point? Well, the public clearly thinks that the Bengals are going to, with over 80% of the public betting on the Bengals. I just have a feeling that this is a game that really trends in Cincinnati's way, and I'm very much with you, Tom, where this is a game that the Bengals should win by 2 possessions, and you just hope that it's not a situation where Tom Brady puts it together at the right time against a really good Joe Burrow-led offense.
Yeah, the one thing that is so hard to really nail down about this game, if you were going to look at it really in-depthly, is that there's a lot of injuries on both sides, honestly. There's a lot of key injuries for both teams.
Yep.
Regardless of what you think, it comes down to the 2 quarterbacks and how they play. And if I were a betting man, and the odds are minus 3.5 for the Bengals.
Which is not a big number.
No, it's not. But it's a field goal. It's past the field goal, so they got to get at least 4 points in order to cover that spread. I would be Bucks, honestly. I know I've been really down on the Bucks. They've had a lot of injuries, but Bengals like to play close games. And Tom Brady, he thrives on picking on teams that are hurt, picking on teams that have a weak secondary. I would say we have not a weak secondary, but we have a rookie playing right now. And
Good secondary.
He's playing well.
Solid secondary. Solid. Maybe not elite since Awuzie went down, but the Bengals are a solid secondary.
Right. But I'm just saying that this is a type of game where Tom Brady has to play for playoffs. I mean, he goes 6-8, and that's not a good look for the rest of their schedule. I don't know if you've seen it.
Well, I have. But when I start looking inside some of the numbers about this, okay, the Buccaneers have only scored 20 or more points in a game 5 times this year. 5 times all year. 20 or more. Their defense, on the other hand, has allowed 20 or fewer 7 times, and twice allowed 20 on the nose, and another time 21. Now, they got boat raced by the 49ers last week. They gave up 35. The only other game where they've given up a ton of points was in that shootout against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs when Kansas City beat the Buccaneers 41-31. But you look at the rest of their season this year, right? They win 14-12. They win 20-10, 21-15, 20-16. They lose to the Steelers. They beat the Rams 16-13. Ravens, they gave up 27. They beat Seattle 21-16. They lost to the Browns in overtime. That was in Cleveland, 23-17. But then they bounced back. They only score 17. That was that miracle finish against the Saints, and then they get clobbered. But they still got the Bengals, followed by the Cardinals, followed by the Panthers, and followed by the Falcons. Yes or no, will the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win their division?
Oh.
They have the 2 teams I just mentioned that they still have to play this year. The Panthers and the Falcons, who, of course, starting this week, have Des Ridder, the former UC Bearcat star, as their starting quarterback. Both of those teams are 1 game behind the Bucs. Do the Buccaneers win their division, yay or nay?
I'm going to say yes.
I mean, if I want to hedge my heart, I'm going to say yes, because I really want Desmond Ridder, 1, to play well and to win out. That'd be awesome. But that would also involve the Falcons beating the Ravens, which is what we really need. We really need the Ravens to lose 1 so we can take over that first place spot.
They're not going to lose. They're not going to lose.
I don't know.
They're not going to lose because they have something that if the Bengals were in this situation, the Bengals would not be winning like the Ravens are winning. What I mean by that is the Bengals' backup quarterback is not very good. He's just not. All right, well, let's take Burrow out, Brandon Allen out, and whoever they have sitting in that 3-hole. Okay? That's where the Ravens are. And what did they do? And I don't think the Bengals could do this. I could be wrong. I hope we never have to find out. I don't think the Bengals could all of a sudden become a team that runs for 255 yards in a game tomorrow because they have to. You're not giving the Ravens enough credit. I mean, you're just not because you're a Bengal fan.
No,
What they do, and it gets back to that thing, Paul, Casey, that we talked about. Would you bring Lamar Jackson back? Would you rather be in the spot that the Cardinals are in, giving Kyler Murray all the money that was before his injury, or do you pay Lamar Jackson? The Ravens have a a history and a track record of winning football and an identity about their team. And when you lose a starting quarterback like they've lost, and you lose a second-string quarterback like they are not going to lose a game until they play the Bengals. They're going to find a way to beat Cleveland. They're going to find a way to beat Pittsburgh, and they're going to find a way to beat Atlanta.
Well, if Lamar Jackson comes back, maybe they can beat Atlanta. But
you think that stinking Atlanta team that we saw here at Paycor Stadium, you really believe that team is going to take the field against the Baltimore Ravens defense with a rookie quarterback and beat the Baltimore Ravens?
I can't confidently say they can. That's why I said I was going to hedge my heart. I really want Atlanta to beat the Ravens.
We all want them to win.
I will say this. I don't like the odds against the Browns, and I don't like their odds against the Steelers. And by the time they play the Bengals, Lamar Jackson's probably back, which gives them a slight advantage, but not much, because I really do believe that the next time that the Ravens and Bengals play, you're going to see how badly they're going to get exposed. The team wins games, but have you seen how they win games?
I do see, and we've got some of the people chatting on the chat. You know, this is what always happens when you say something nice in a town about the team that that you're competing with. You say something good about the Ravens, and then people say, "Oh, Brennaman loves the Ravens." I don't love the Ravens. I don't care about the Ravens. Could care less. Although I do like John Harbaugh. I like him. I like him as a guy. All I'm saying is you have to give them credit. If I was sitting in Baltimore, I'd be saying the same thing about the Bengals. They've won 5 in a row. They had the death of an assistant coach. They had a quarterback who had an appendectomy and wasn't ready for the season. They had an offensive line that gave up 13 sacks in the first 2 games of the year. They lose the best cornerback they have on the team. They've lost their best wide receiver for 4 weeks, and they win 3 out of 4 games. I'd say the same thing about the Bengals sitting in Baltimore. You got to give it up to the Bengals, right? Yeah. So you got to give it up to the Ravens.
I'm with you.
John Harbaugh, leader of men. Leader of men.
We do have a couple of things of breaking news here over the course of that segment that I've been working on, trying to make sure we were all up to speed with. The first from Cincinnati, their linebacker, Bearcats linebacker Ivan Pace, first unanimous All-American in school history.
Yep.
So congratulations to him. And the second piece of Cincinnati breaking news is that Sean Miller, no suspension. Nothing. No penalty. Nothing. No suspension. Which, if you followed these cases from the NCAA, Louisville didn't get a penalty. Nobody else got a penalty. This is not surprising, but at least the NCAA was consistent. So, not surprising. Arizona got a $5,000 fine, reduction in scholarships, and a 7-week recruiting ban during this school year. But other than that, nothing. So that's consistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're going to...
You know,
you have something to say?
You know, people are going to fly off the handle. I'm not rooting for anything bad to happen to Sean Miller. But, I mean, come on. Give me a break. What's gone on at some of these schools, and in some cases, Arizona, where the coach who was the head coach is no longer there, where you have a national championship team from a year ago where the head coach is still there, and these big-time programs aren't even getting a slap on the wrist. But you can take it to the bank. If this was Auburn, if this was...
Auburn only got 2 games.
No, though. I'm just saying. I'm just saying in general. If this was... I could rip off 100 schools that aren't blue bloods. The gates of hell would be crashing down on these programs from the NCAA. They have got these guys red-handed on stuff.
They don't, though.
Yes, they do. The Arizona coach was on a call that was recorded and owned by the FBI. Now, that's not Sean Miller on the other end of that call, but that is a fact that happened.
And he went to jail.
Okay, I'm saying. But during that time, was Sean Miller not his boss? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm saying that so the assistant coach goes to jail, and we're supposed to believe the head coach doesn't know a damn thing about any of it.
They didn't prove anything.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's the same.
And again, I'm not going to sit here, and I'm not beating because I don't know. I can only go by what was laid out there. But time after time after time, whether it's the old days with Kentucky, whether it's some of the stuff that's gone on at North Carolina and at Duke about kids going to class or not going to class, were they out of school when they were actually playing after the turn of the semester, were they getting help, on and on and on and on. And for Bill Self to take a, 3-game self-imposed suspension? Is that what that was?
Yeah, he did. They did do a self-imposed. So did Arizona, though, too. Arizona self-imposed.
This is laughable. It's laughable. I mean, come on. And look, the Xavier fans, I found out from some of them last week, they can be some of the nastiest people on the planet. All fan bases can be some of the nastiest people on the planet, and I'm sure I'm going to get lit up by them. I'm not sitting here saying that Sean Miller is guilty of anything. I'm making more reference to the fact that you told me that Arizona got a 7-week ban on recruiting? And what else?
Yeah, it was
a $5,000 fine?
Yeah, but that's the same thing that everybody else has got.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Is that this is laughable.
Well, what's the issue, though?
What's the issue? They're paying players when you're not allowed to pay players. And it's proven in a court of law. They're giving a guy $100,000 to play basketball.
But they didn't prove that.
Yes, they did. That's why the guy's in jail.
Okay.
That's why the guy's in jail. They paid a guy, what's his name, Ayton?
Book Richardson.
Yeah, I'm saying the
player.
player.
DeAndre Ayton.
Ayton, okay.
Yes.
They paid this guy to play basketball at the University of Arizona.
But
now, who knew about it, doesn't know about it, I have no idea. I wasn't there. But those are the facts. So you're telling me that you can give a guy $100,000 and your school gets a 7-week recruiting ban and you get a $5,000 fine? That's your punishment?
I mean, what's the issue? Everybody's doing it.
See, that in a nutshell is the problem. Everybody's doing it. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, Ohio State in football, before Urban got there, they got a guy trading memorabilia for tattoos. Trading his jersey for tattoos. They get a 1-year suspension from a bowl game. Now, that's punishment. Was Arizona suspended from the NCAA tournament?
They self-imposed a ban from the NCAA tournament.
No, I'm asking you, though, did the NCAA give Arizona a 1-year ban from the NCAA tournament?
No.
And no, exclusion from being on national television?
No.
None of that kind of thing?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, enough of this.
We've got a cherry on top, Tom.
Oh, we do.
Oh, we do. Okay.
It's funny enough. This is actually from the Xavier game last night, but it's not Xavier related. It's actually the team they played. I was standing right next to this, and this. Well, go ahead.
I love this. It's peaceful. We need some peace in this room.
So Sean Woods, the head coach of the Southern Jaguars last night, I guess he was trying to get back on the court, right? I mean, he's trying to get back to his playing days. So here he is, D'ing up in the first half last night. Look at him. Sean Woods, get after it. Wait. Get those hands up, baby. Get those hands up.
Good stuff. Yeah, and then the guy drains it.
I was standing I'm right out of the camera frame, and we were all standing there just laughing so hard. I mean, my guy was, and that was the whole game, too. We just got that one clip, but, oh, that was great. Great moment.
That is great stuff. That's great stuff. Got to love that. That's our cherry on top. All right, boys. Great job today, fellas. I mean, creative. You guys are on your game. Constantly on your game. Casey, Paul, Brandon. And now we're going to box the lunch. Thank God.
It was a fun show today.
Thank God.
Fun show today.
The NCAA just decided to punt. That's what they did, right? They've gotten themselves into a position where they realize they're so far down the rabbit hole that there really isn't a good solution to any of this. And they're already doing NIL at this point. Now, I know at the time that wasn't the case. So there was rules that were broken. But it's almost like the terrible analogy of the day is that they were trying to get someone in trouble for going 65 and a 55 on the speed limit.
Right.
And that road now is 75. And they're sitting in the court of law.
Yeah.
They're sitting in the court of law arguing the fact that they went 65 on this road that's now 75. And it's just like, what are we doing here? So I think that they decide, you know what? All of these infractions, all of these rules that were broken before the NIL, that NIL kind of solved, if you will. I don't know if they solved them, but they made it to where it was legal. They just punted. They just said, "Hey, here's your punishment. It's probably not that harsh. We don't care because we're an organization that needs to make money. And if you want to get down to the truth of it, you don't want to ban the best product that makes you money."
The NCAA's report, this is the quote. This is the quote, and I'll leave it alone. 2 of the 3, not 1, 2 of the 3 assistant coaches. So there's 3 assistant coaches, and 2 of the 3 intentionally committed violations involving fraudulent academic transcripts, receipt of cash bribes, facilitating a meeting with an aspiring agent, impermissible inducements and recruiting violations, all within an 18-month period. So we're not talking about one player getting cash.
Ridiculous.
We're talking about academic transcripts. We're talking about bribes. We're talking about setting up meetings with agents. We're talking about recruiting violations. All of this goes on in 18-month time frame. And I'm not getting into the Sean Miller part of that, but the University of Arizona part of all of that is, where is the punishment? A $5,000 fine?
Here's what I would argue, too, is that it's almost, and this kind of goes to your point, Trace, it's almost time served. Because if you look at what has happened to Louisville, their program is a disaster. Chris Mack never got it going because he was never able to get out from underneath of what was going to happen with whatever got adjudicated by the NCAA. Now, nothing ended up happening, but look at where they are now. They're 0-9, probably going to be 0-10 after tonight. They have no direction, no ability to do anything on the recruiting trail for the last 4 years. Chris Mack gets fired. After Patino gets fired, it's a total disaster. Sean Miller gets fired at Arizona. They had their own struggles over the last few years, had to self-impose a postseason ban. I mean, it's not like these programs haven't gone through things. Now, I don't know how that should relate to what the IARP, which supposedly is supposed to have nothing to do with the NCAA. This was a committee that was created just to rule on Xavier, Kansas, Louisville, these 4 or 5 schools, and it will not exist any longer. This committee just handled these, Memphis too, handled these cases. It's done. There's this IARP thing we've been talking about. It's done. This is it. It's over now. So when you look at these schools that have had these struggles over the last few years, I think that what I would love to know, and we'll never know the answer to this unless somebody goes in depth with the committee, is if time served played into that at all. Because I would argue that Arizona and Louisville especially have gone through a lot over the last however many years that you could argue, is it worth it? I don't know. Louisville for sure. I mean, their program is a disaster now, total dumpster fire.
Yeah, Louisville's paid.
Yeah, yeah. I would, at the end of the day, it comes down to this, in my opinion. And this is Tom gets fired up because he feels like there needs to be justification.
Tom got my heart racing. I was fired up.
Tom, listen. I'm sitting here reading about Kansas. Now you use Louisville.
Can you imagine rooting for Kansas?
You can use Louisville as an example.
I don't
because
know how
their
many
program's
people...
in shambles. Was Kansas basketball in shambles? What price have they paid?
They're not paying much of a price.
They went to a national championship and violated multiple infractions in the basketball program.
Okay,
they won the national championship.
No one's. I'm not arguing. I'm going to
go protest.
What I'm going to say though
house.
is that you have to ask yourself what rules were broken. Quite frankly, the rules that were broken 95% of the time right now were ridiculous rules in the first place.
I won't argue that.
They were rules that should have never been in place. They were rules by if we're getting down to it, guys in suits in Indianapolis that have an NCAA logo on them that want to make all the money and they don't want anyone else to take from it. So the reality is those rules are quite frankly, they should have never been rules in the first place.
The
if you want to get down to
NCAA says, as you know, not to interrupt, but let's make sure we understand what the deal is. Kansas basketball has a $197 million endorsement deal with Adidas. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. The NCAA notice of allegations. Representatives from Adidas, who has a contract with Kansas, paid recruits to get them to go play at the University of Kansas. The NCAA also said that Bill Self and an assistant coach, quote, embraced, welcomed, and encouraged the illegal payments. Self was charged with violating responsibility of head coach rules, and the university itself was charged with a lack of institutional control, the highest level of NCAA violations.
We could talk about this for length. I don't know if it's interesting to talk about. I would just say this. Let's just punish them. Let's ban the program for 5 years and punish everybody that has nothing to do with any of it, all because kids have been undervalued for years in the NCAA, college basketball specifically.
Yes.
And that's all this comes down to. If kids aren't going to class, if you're faking transcripts, then I have a problem with that because that's outside of the window of what I would call morality, quite frankly. All of these universities were trying to compete to get these high-level kids, and guess what? And it only takes one to start offering money, and then the rest of them are going to start offering money because their job's on the line. If you can't go get the best players in college basketball, forget it. So I don't feel like it's really anyone's fault. It's the system's fault, quite frankly.
There's no doubt.
You know, Coach K did it. Bill Self did it. Sean Miller did it. And I just say at this point, who gives a rip? Like, let's just lay it all on the table and just say, okay, it's just like steroids in baseball. Just say, you know what? There was a small portion in this history's game where things weren't right. We tried to get it fixed. This is what we did about it. Move on. What, Tom, is Casey the biggest Ravens hater? Maybe in the entire country.
It's ridiculous.
He just won't give him any credit is all I'm asking for. He doesn't have to be a hater. I mean, the Lord knows the world is filled with them. But, look, you have to give him credit.
For what?
For being in first place in the same division the Bengals play in. Let's start with that little nugget.
Have you seen their schedule? I sure hope they're in first place with that schedule. Oh, they're so good.
Fair enough. Also, really quickly, I want the chat to give us a topic that we can talk about on Box Lunch. But one thing that I'm curious from you, Tom, do you see any issue in the way in which the NFL handles their postseason and the way that it seeds? Do you think that Tampa Bay finishing at whatever they'll finish at, or the Panthers finishing at whatever, or Atlanta, should they host a home game against a team that could possibly win 12 to 13 games in the Dallas Cowboys?
I have no problem with it at all.
Okay.
I mean, I know what you're getting at, and maybe you seed them according to their overall record, and that's been talked about, you know, in a lot of different – I don't have a problem with it. I mean, you know, any given year, you could play in a great division, you could play in a terrible division, you could play in a mediocre division, middle of the road. And the way they've got it set up where you're divisional champs, you know, your outside schedule depending on how you did the year before, there's a dramatic difference, and that's why what Casey's talking about there, about the Ravens' schedule. Well, the Ravens had a bad year last year. They lost their quarterback. They lost their last 4 games of the season. They didn't have a good record, so they're not playing the same schedule the Cincinnati Bengals are playing this year. That's just the way the NFL sets up shop. So I got no problem. What, you don't like it?
I don't like it. But I understand it. I just don't think that you have to. Just because you win your division, I don't think you should be automatically awarded a home playoff game. I think that if there's a tie, like if you have the same record as another team and they didn't win their division and you won your division, then the tiebreaker goes to you first.
Well,
it would make it more interesting, I feel like, at times, like when it comes to playoff seeding, and it makes it every week a little more imperative to where if you're Tampa, quite frankly, you could rest, and this is where I kind of have a little bit of an issue with it. You could rest your players with the less than 500 record on the last week of the season because you have the tiebreakers to lock up the division, and you can rest your players on the last week and have a home playoff game with a losing record. And I know this doesn't happen every year.
Right.
I think it's happened
anomaly.
one time ever, I think.
Yeah, and maybe like that's the argument you could make back, and I'd say, okay, you're right. Maybe that's a good reason. I just have something about the fact that Tampa is going to host a home playoff game against a team like the Cowboys who might win 12, 13 games is just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they've got to have something towards winning the division, right? Because if there's no reward for winning your division, why have the divisions, right? That's the whole point. That's the whole purpose behind it, is you got to have some reward to say, like, oh, you've beaten 3 teams. You're the best out of these 4 teams. You played them twice. You're the best team. You get a home playoff game. Because if there's no reward for doing that, then don't have divisions. Just have random schedules.
Yeah. So what else you got coming up today?
We have some Tom Brady topic. Then I have a little nostalgia. I had some nostalgia last Sunday that I brought up to read. I was like, I want the chat to pipe in on some things that bring them back some good memories.
The one thing we will not discuss today is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I made a commitment to myself personally, really more than anyone, that I'm not doing this whole Mahomes bit.
Yeah,
and
haters come out.
It's not a shtick, okay? It's serious. I'll do it on Friday. We'll save that for Friday. Okay. Tom, my last question for you before you go.
Yes.
I've been thinking of trying to ways to make baseball more fun. Becomes harder and harder. Do you think that there's any chance in the world in my lifetime that we might get to a point where they realize they have to make every game seem a little bit more important than it's just like, oh, it's a whatever if you lose, it's a whatever if you win? 70% of the season, it feels like. And maybe you look at this differently, but I always just think, oh, the Reds lost, whatever, they play again tomorrow.
Sure.
Or whatever other team lost, they play again tomorrow. And I just wonder if there's a way to where if we split it up, and I know they did it before. Reed always brings up the point that the Reds had the best record. Oh, yeah, and he can explain that in a second. If they made it 2 81-game seasons.
I love it.
Will that ever happen? And is there a chance
will never happen. And we talked about this in that Pioneer League show that I did with people that have been around Major League Baseball for 30, 40 years. Billy Bavasi, former general manager with the Angels in Seattle. And I brought up the same question you just brought up. Because in minor league baseball, all levels of minor league baseball, that's exactly what they do. You play the first half of the schedule. Yep. Whoever wins the first half, they automatically qualify for the playoffs, even if they don't win another game the rest of the year. They're in when the playoffs start, right? And then you do the second the second half of the season, and you take a wild card from each division, right, for the first half. You take a wild card from the division of the second half, and then they meet in the postseason. And I think it's great because look, there was a number of years ago where the Reds got off to a bad start, and they had everybody and his brother that was hurt. They didn't even have – I mean, I don't think they started their regular, front 8, right? Their position player 8, but like 5 times in the first 60 games or something, right? That's to a lot of teams, Guys are coming back from surgery in the offseason. Somebody breaks their hand in spring training, whatever it might be. And then the second half, you have where teams can get healthy, or by that time, say the trade deadline would be in between the start or the end of the first half and the start of the second half, where all of a sudden you've got a brand new team out there.
Right.
And I think you would have more teams that don't tank, That's been a major issue in baseball, right?
Yep.
I mean, they changed
100%.
the whole draft because of tanking.
Right.
And did the lottery for the first time and all that. You wouldn't have teams tank. You would have more teams' fan bases that have a reason to be interested instead of getting, what were the Reds last year, 3-22?
Right.
You're done.
Right, you're done.
You're done. It's over.
Then you got to restart the
You're
second
not
half,
even to
right?
May 1 yet. Done.
Right, the season's over.
Right. I mean, are the fans going to pay money to come to the ballpark?
Nope.
And that's half the teams in baseball by the time you hit June 1st.
Yeah, but I think baseball has its most life within an entire league at the very beginning of the year because, well, sadly, more and more franchise fans are starting to feel like they don't even have hope to start the year off, which is a whole other topic of conversation.
Sure.
But at least around opening day, we've done it in here. We've tried to convince ourselves the Reds are going to be good, even though maybe deep down we know that they're not going to be good. But maybe,
Yeah, did you see what they did in Atlanta?
Yeah, if Senzel gets hot and this guy plays well, then all of a sudden maybe you got something. That never turns out to be the case.
No.
But you could do that twice per year, at least within the league. You know, you got a fresh start at the end of the All-Star game, if you will. And I know it makes too much sense not to do it, which is why I would hope at some point that happens. But
well, I think it's going to have to come down to, like my dad talked today. Look, it's like, and I used to have this conversation with Phil Castellini regularly when I worked for the team. And people may like him, may not like him, whatever the case may be, what he said last year, all those kinds of things. But when it comes to the business of baseball, he is a very, very smart guy. And he knows the ins and outs on the business side of the game as well as anybody that's in the game today. Mm-hmm. And look, this is a guy who fired me. So, I mean, I'm not sitting up here cheerleading for the guy. But I will say this. Again, you got to give credit where credit's due. When it comes to the business side of baseball, he understands it. And I've heard him say it once. I've heard him say it 1,000 times. We're not in that corner yet, meaning we, the industry of baseball. We are not there yet. But we continue to inch along the edge of the flooring, making our way to that corner. And that corner is going to be where half or more of the teams in baseball cannot compete. And then maybe you realize the owner side, player side, fans, everybody involved says, okay, we really do need, for the survival of this sport, to make some changes. Whether they're rule changes, which are starting down that road this year, things like you're talking about, or the biggest issue, and that's the fiscal makeup of the way baseball and the business of baseball is played.
fair enough. Chat topic of the day is going to be the absolute absurdity that is people talking, I'll read it word for word, crap about the Bengals not being in the race for the best team in the AFC. That's what we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll get that.
Talk about that.
They're the best team in the AFC.
I will say this. He brought up the split season. Now, you might remember this. They did this in the MLB one time.
Well, it was because of the strike.
They had the strike, so
Yep.
they had a shortened season,
Yep.
and they decided, and this was right around the time, this was before they even had the divisional series, so it was just the
Yep.
top two teams
Yep.
from each side of the league played
81,
in the postseason.
82, one of those 2 years.
It was 1981.
81.
So they decided that they're going to split the season into two. The winner of the first half of the season gets a bid to the postseason. The winner of the second half of your division gets to be in the postseason. The Reds finished in second in the West the first half, and then finished second in the West in the second half. So they didn't make the postseason, and they had the best record in baseball.
And if I'm not mistaken, the second best record in baseball that year belonged to the Kansas City Royals, and the exact same thing happened to
over
them.
in the American League.
Yes.
So
Pretty sure that's right.
things happen. I'm not out on that. I'm not out on the idea.
All right, boys.
Tom,
have a good one
thanks.
today. Paul, don't let all your hater friends come out of the woodwork today.
God, they were on Tom last week.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, it just wears you out. I mean,
It was
it's
a black eye on Xavier fandom. And I'm a part of Xavier fandom, and it was a black eye on us.
I never said the guy was guilty of anything. All I did was lay out exactly the wordage of the NCAA. That's all I did. Okay? You can read the same thing. Just get online.
Paul,
Get
get your crowd in control. Get your crowd in control.
He needs to rein them in.
Rein them in. Boys, have a good one. Going out to the rain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you, Tom. Thanks,
All right,
Tom.
Tom Brady. So I used to be on the side.
You want to talk about the chat topic of the day, or while we got it? Fresh in the mind.
Sure.
Fresh in the mind.
Yeah. So the Bengals, the disrespect of the Bengals, to a certain extent, I think is valid, but at the same time, it's two things for me, and it's relatively simple. One, just like the Alabama Crimson Tide this year has been given pass on maybe their inability to play good football, but then all of a sudden they are ranked 5th in the college football playoffs, and then all of a sudden you still hear people say that Alabama was better than Ohio State, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the problem with the Bengals, is that they've had this long history of losing, and at some point, that in and of itself is the reason why they don't get the credit.
Well, yeah, when you're trying to judge a team and how good it is, you take all the available information that you can have. And part of the available information is what has the team done in the past. So when the Chiefs are, in the AFC Championship for 5 straight seasons.
What do the Bengals have to do, though?
Right. No, that's the question. And they appear to be a more complete team than any team in the AFC. They appear to have depth at the defensive. They've got an improved offensive line that has Joe Burrow has been sacked the least amount of times in the NFL over the past 7 weeks. They've got offensive weapons, though they are getting hurt at a rapid pace. They seem to be a complete team that doesn't rely overly on, their star quarterback like per se the Bills do with Josh Allen, or they don't rely on, the everything that the Chiefs involve all the time. So I understand why people are slow to recognize the Bengals. As one of the bigger Bengal fans I know myself, I understand why people are slow to award them as the best team in the AFC.
See, some Emperor brings up the fact that he thinks that they have to win the Super Bowl for it to go away. I don't know if they really even have to do that. I mean, if they're relevant and they're in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, the Bills are up there, and the Bills haven't.
Exactly.
Haven't even
Everyone acts like the Bills
won an AFC Championship.
are it, and the Bills obviously haven't won a Super Bowl.
Bills are a big market team, though.
Are they?
Is Buffalo a big market?
Come on, Casey,
New York?
Buffalo is not a big market. I mean, it comes down to having a
Buffalo was a big market team.
Yeah, then you said New York. That'd be like saying Cleveland is Cincinnati.
Hold on. Before we get any further, let me explain, because the Bills.
Please do.
The Bills were really, really good with Phil Simms. They had a really great team for a long time. They pretty much had a dynasty. They ran the AFC for years.
In the early 90s, right?
In the early 90s.
30 years ago.
I'm just saying, teams like, is Pittsburgh a big market team?
Well, Pittsburgh's
No,
won.
but they have a lot of history there. That's what I'm saying, is that the Bills have a bigger history, bigger fan base than the Bengals, and they have a more recent history than the Bengals.
The Bills didn't make the postseason for 20 years, Casey.
Yeah, Casey, here's what happens.
Neither did Cincinnati. That's what I'm saying.
They did make the postseason for 20 years, Casey. We made it 6 straight years just last decade.
Yeah, I can't defend you on this one, Casey. I'm sorry. But I will say the Bengals are close to getting their flowers. They really are.
Yeah.
And I think 2 things happened this year. One thing happened this year that didn't help their cause. One is Joe Burrow and the Bengals came out and did not play well the first few weeks of the season. The narrative immediately was Super Bowl hangover.
Because we've seen it before, right?
It was relatively valid. I don't
Falcons
need to
and
go
Panthers.
back into the archives for all of the fandoms of the Bengals fans here to say you guys were down and out. Hell, Lance McAllister, Hell, he had him out of the postseason.
Oh!
Did you see the tweet
No.
he had? I have to go back and dig it up. I like Lance, but he was saying that they had franchise issues left and right, blah, 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 blah. All I'm saying is that's part of the narrative, and it takes a little while for that to wear off. And I think that the Bengals can do that if they make the AFC Championship game this year. If they don't, then it'll be maybe, again, a whole nother year of the Bengals having to be relevant before they get their flowers. And I got news for you. I'm not going to do the Mahomes bit. I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, if Patrick Mahomes is in the same conference as the Bengals, which he will be until the unforeseeable future, I assume he's going to be there forever, you probably are always going to be riding back seat until the national media decides to change their narrative on that guy. So it might be frustrating. I don't get exactly why maybe the Bengals isn't looked upon as a different type of team this year. But as I've said before, they can lose to almost anybody, and they can beat anybody. And that's what the Bengals are this year. We'll see if that changes, but that's the reality of the situation. Is that the national media is not going to give the Bengals their credit because they haven't had any sustained history, right? If this same Bengals team were the Steelers,
yeah,
they'd be talked about every single day on national
media. Or the
media.
Eagles. Right, the Eagles hadn't been good the past few years. I mean, they won the Super Bowl 5 years ago, but over the past few years, I mean, they just took a quarterback in the first round 2 years ago.
Philadelphia, a little bit bigger market.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if they were a more popular team, the Bengals would be, right?
So at the end of the day, it comes down to the history of the franchise as to why you don't get your national media attention,
right,
and why you don't get the benefit of the doubt. It's as simple as that. Tom Brady, really quickly. I have this weird thing with Tom to where I used to I couldn't stand Tom.
Yeah.
Tom was like very, he had no personality. I'll admit, hand up, I thought he was a system quarterback for a long time.
Can I tell you one of my first memories of working at Chatterbox is we're over in the old office and Trace is showing me these clips. He's like, oh, look. And it's just Tom Brady throwing to open receivers. And he's like, oh, look, Tom Brady, the GOAT. Greatest of all time, hitting this guy. Who could make that window, throw it through that window, and it's just a dude open my 10 yards. And I was like, oh, my gosh. After Tom had won, his 5th Super Bowl, 6th Super Bowl?
I still have a little bit of that, and chat might crush me for saying this. I still have this little bit of thought that Tom Brady was put into unbelievable situations, which is what made him. He did make the plays. I'll give him his flowers. Listen, he went up to Green Bay, and he beat Aaron Rodgers. So that's when, at that point forward, I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. He's the greatest of all time. I don't care. Fine. Kill me. Crucify me. Greatest of all time. But he's so much more likable now in Tampa. Like, he's really genuinely, I like him now.
Well, he wasn't behind a rugged curtain of Bill
thing.
Belichick controlling an entire market. But you're right. No, he's a likable guy. I've always thought Tom Brady was likable.
Even when he played for the Patriots?
Yeah. I don't let greatness cloud me.
Oh, stop.
I don't. I lean into greatness. I like when people are constantly at the top. I enjoy that, truthfully. And I know I'm in the minority there. I know all it takes is a team to be, at the top of their respective league for 3 years before you're like, oh, my God, these guys again, the Patriots again, Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship again.
I just think that at some point it becomes annoying when the guy gets all the credit for teams that he was on when they had the best defensive team in the league. They literally had a defense that gave up like average 10 points a game. It's like, yeah, I mean, of course, he probably is going to play well. He probably is going to go to the Super Bowl. He played in a division. Again, this is for me to come out and say I like Tom Brady. But at the time, he played against the Jets. Or not the Jets, excuse me. He played against the Dolphins.
And the Jets.
The Jets. Yeah, the Jets.
And the bad Bills.
And the Bills.
Yeah.
Terrible teams. Every year he's guaranteed a postseason spot. Yeah. So, but anyways, I just like him now. I think he's personable. His time is up. Father time is caught up. He's not even making, he used to make like some bad throws. He's making a lot of bad throws.
He's got to put a lot into
Having said all that, there's some chance he probably wins this week, and I'm not trying to suggest the bad mojo in here, and I'm not going to go down the rampage that the Bengals are going to lose because they have done well against the spread, and Tampa's done pretty poorly against the spread.
Terrible.
So you can hang your hat on that. I know Casey's been caught up on that 3.5-point line, which if you didn't
that
know,
was an all-time moment in the show.
More than a field goal, and you have to get 4 to cover.
That's what I said.
We know it was redundant. It was awesome.
I was just letting the chat know in case they don't know what a 3.5-point spread means.
That's fair.
That's a good point. Yeah, chat should probably know they gotta win by more than a touchdown to cover that. Got to get 4.
Oh my God! It was. That was.
I mean, you can just say you're welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. You're right. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
All right.
Oh, also, wait.
Go ahead.
While we're talking about the show today.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
Was I the only one that found the Ron Burgundy thing as funny as it was?
So it was definitely funny. You laughing added to the enjoyment. It was. I mean,
him being like, I'm Ron Burgundy. Like, literally doing the Ron Burgundy was just the best moment.
It was funny.
Worlds colliding.
Well, that wasn't the best moment in the show today. The best moment was when he asked if Marty should start an OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah,
that was amazing.
No, this show was
Off
littered
the rails
with gold. There was gold all over the place.
Off the rails. I'll tell you what though about Thom. I mean, 14 teams are going to make the postseason. The Bucs are more than likely going to make the postseason. They've got, out of the 14 teams that are make the postseason, they probably have the worst roster. And that being said, Thom's not one of the guys that you want to face. Like, if you could list which teams, he's probably 5th or 6th. Like, I don't want to face Tom Brady in the postseason. No way, no how. And they're probably the worst team.
I'll take him in the postseason.
Well,
Fair enough.
You don't have to until the big game. Until the big game.
I will say I have nostalgia written down. I kind of want people in the chat to share some of their things. So
poignant.
I don't know, there's probably a better word for this. Maybe I'm not a wordsmith by any means, and I really didn't use those orange vocabulary books when I was in school a whole lot, so my vocabulary is relatively limited. I went down to the Bengals game, obviously, on Sunday, and I had a situation where I forgot cash. Big mistake, especially when you're trying to park.
That's what's wrong with today's generation.
Yeah. No cash, trying to find a photo park. I knew in the back of my mind, I was like, you know what? Fountain Square, where I parked all the time when I was in high school and even in college, going to Reds games. Good little spot. Yeah, it's a small walk, but just easy in, easy out. Always know that the parking garage is not going to be full. It's going to be open. You're good to go. I get there. First thing that happens, and this isn't a part of the story, but the first thing that happens is the scariest moment of my life happened on Sunday. I pull up to go into the garage, and I have the truck. I'm driving the truck. The truck is a little bigger than most trucks. And I get out to see if it's going to clear. And it's probably, I'm not even joking, chat and guys in the room, it's like I'm less than a foot. I don't know if you've ever done that before. Terrible idea.
I did that with your truck in Chicago, but go on.
Great. Good to know. Breaking news. So I go in. I'm literally thinking at any moment I'm going to bust the pipes. There's going to be sprinkler heads just popping off. And I've literally started a situation where I don't know how to get the truck back out of the garage.
Yeah.
If this happens. It's a bad spot. I say that just to say that's part of the story. But I get out of there. Truck's fine, by the way. I start walking down to the stadium. And I have this really weird thing that happens to me. And I'm sure that people in the chat have this happen to them from time to time. It's like, I just vividly remember doing the same exact thing, going down to the Reds ballpark when I was in high school and college, and at that time, they were good. And obviously, that made me a little sad for a minute. And it took like every bit of 60 seconds for me to shake out of that. I legit was like all in my feelings for 60 seconds walking down, just thinking of the memories of the 2010s of the year, 2010s of the world, the 2012s. And I did what most men do when they get in they get in those situations like, I got to get the hell out of here. I'm like, all right, where am I going? I got to get to the Bengals game.
Put all your emotions in a bottle, put it here, and then one day you'll die. Like those will just never let them out.
I got rid of those emotions really, really fast. And I'm just wondering, do you guys ever have that happen to you? And if so, when is it? What is it? Or am I the only guy that just has these weird things that happen to me from time to time that bring up feelings that I'm like, I got to get rid of these?
The things that I don't know if I have the exact same, flood of emotions, but they always make me happy to see, and you're seeing less and less of them every time you go to the ballpark just because I think of the world that we live in today. Those little knick-knacky shops, you know what I'm talking about, that sell the non-licensed red gear and non-licensed T-shirts and pennants and everything that sit outside the stadium.
Talking about the vendors?
Yeah, those little vendors that sit on the outside of the stadium. You're walking and you pass 20 on the way there, and you're tugging on your dad's shirt like, Dad, come on. Dad, come on, this baseball is signed by every player, and it's just stamped on there.
You know you're in the middle class, by the way. You know you're raised in a middle-class family if you bought peanuts outside the stadium and or water outside the stadium. Like, that is the total dad middle-class move, man. It's like, we gotta buy 5 bottles of water out here. They're like $9 in the game. Is that not the truth?
$3 peanuts, $1 bottles of water. You get in there, but to this day, every time I leave the stadium, I look in those little vendors, be like, oh, what do they got over here? I'm not going to buy anything, but I just remember being a kid just begging for my dad, hey, can I get this Sammy Sosa T-shirt that they would sell when the Cubs would come to town? that's the nostalgia that I live for. Just the moments that you spend with your family and your dad and people that mean something to you at the ballpark.
I used to actually think that the Reds were idiots for even letting people bring in
why you gotta
bottles.
right.
What's the point? Like, you were still coming anyways. Like, why? Oh, I can't bring my water in anymore. I'm not coming.
Every time I go to the Reds game, I see one family. You know, it's a big and it actually makes you blessed to think. I used to go to the ball games all the time. My dad would just be like on a Tuesday night, like, "Hey, you want to go to the Reds game? Yeah, let's go. We're going down there." But then I see this family, mom and a dad, 4 kids. And they're pulling out peanut butter and jellies for each of the kid. Like, this is their big month family thing. And it is so heartwarming to see families still do that. Like, you're just wondering, they're looking there like, that is the most authentic thing that you can think of Americana, taking your entire family to the ballpark. Maybe the kids don't even give 2 craps about the game, but you're just doing it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Do you think that Seth Pryor brings up a point? Do you think that game programs – I have a take on this. Do you think game programs from a nostalgic standpoint will come back at some point in our life because it's just like this – it's just the cool thing. It's the old record. It's the record players, right? Like, vinyl records are a big deal. Is game programs? Is there a chance that happens?
So you guys know me.
Oh man, we are right up. This is Paul's segment.
Well, I got
Paul.
Paul for you because I know where you're gonna go, and I got
Paul
one.
Can you give the chat? We got a lot of new people in the chat here. Can you give the chat a little rundown on just kind of like
I live in Hamilton,
what you
sir.
do?
Oh, absolutely.
Get out of town.
Absolutely, yeah. So I still subscribe to the good old-fashioned newspaper every morning. Go outside on the way to work. You get the newspaper. You throw it back up on.
Paul,
the
how
front
old are you?
porch. I'm 26 years old. Still have a landline. You can still dial the house.
Cable.
Right? Can never sacrifice cable. You might be 30 seconds behind.
Paul, is your phone one of those ones that's got the wire on it on the wall, or no? You got a wire?
We got a wire.
You got a wire?
We got a wire, baby.
You don't even have cordless?
No, it's got a wire.
Not even cordless?
No, you got to sit there and talk.
Go ahead.
No chance I'm making dinner while I'm talking on the phone.
Please keep going, Paul.
But when I was at Notre Dame back in October for that miserable game against Stanford, I went very far out of my way to make a point to go up
and get a program
and get myself a game program for my first game at Notre Dame Stadium.
That's cool. That's cool. I respect.
Little piece of memorabilia.
That's. I wish you get so many virtual tickets, and I think Sir Boy brought this up. He loves collecting real tickets.
Yeah, I love real tickets too.
I don't get many real tickets, and when I went to Dodger Stadium in 2020, 2021, I made sure to get a real ticket.
Yeah.
And any new stadium I go to from here on out, like if I go to the Reds game, I'm still going to use a virtual ticket. I don't need a.
I have a business proposition after you're done with your story.
But as for the game program, you guys want to talk about being a nerd? I sit down and watch Cubs games and keep score on a scorebook, like a mom or a dad at a ballpark.
I can't do that. But
I literally sit down and I mark the balls and strikes, fly out to shortstop. I still do that. It is the dorkiest thing that I do by far. I love keeping.
Do you bring your glove to the game?
No.
All right, that's a hot topic too, I'm sure. No.
I don't bring my glove to the game.
I'm just saying. I think people bring their gloves to the game.
Aaron Judge is hitting 60 home runs.
Chat, really quickly. I want you to put a number. I want you to put a number in the chat, and if it's never, just write never. What age is the cutoff of bringing the glove to the game? What age? I'm gonna go with 13.
Okay, so I was gonna say 14 or 15, only because if you go to batting practice before the game, then you're old enough to like feel that exhilarating feeling of like catching a home run. But if you're just going to like sit in section 300 and you're bringing your glove and you're 17, I don't know. That's not my style, but maybe it is.
I'm a 13. So you're 14. That's fair. What do you got?
I never brought my glove to the game ever.
So you're a never guy?
I mean, you could bring. I don't care if 12-year-old kids, 10-year-old kids, 9-year-old kids bring it.
When
but
does Reed Mouse judge somebody based off their age if they have a glove on them?
If they're a high school kid and they have a glove on at the game, yeah, I'm judging you.
I will say, I think there's an age where, like, between being like a teenager and having a kid, where maybe you're not bringing your glove to the game, but if you're a dad and you're in solidarity with your son,
yeah, that's
you know,
cute.
then you're okay.
That's cute.
But I do think it was fun being like 14, 15, and you get to the stadium on a summer day. You and your friends go down to the stadium because you got nothing else to do, like 2.5 hours before the game. Like Nationals Park opened like 2.5 hours before the game started.
Yeah, and
you could go and you could watch
before.
all of visitors' batting practice,
Yeah.
all
I
of
get
home
that.
batting practice. You know, you're catching home runs, whatever. But at a certain age, that kind of just
You want to talk nostalgia really quickly? You know what Thom has, and I'm going to ask him to bring it in here at one point. And I don't know if there's a way we can implement this into the show. Maybe we can get some like photocopies of some certain games and bring them up and see if Thom can remember them or not. Thom has his scorecard, which is basically a huge sheet of a ton of notes. I mean, you talk about a note taker. This guy had tons of notes on these games. He has every single card that he's ever called. And now, you got to think about how many games this man called. He has literally a library. He's got years, big old binders this thick of every single game. He just rips one out the other day, starts flipping through it, pulls it out. Oh, it's Breeze versus Rodgers, 2000 and whatever.
9, right?
What the hell? It's wild. I get genuinely,
That's
it's
so
wild.
cool.
And he does. I mean, he doesn't. You know, he's not a Brady. That's one cool thing about Thom. If you really don't get a chance to know him personally, is he really is incredibly humble. Like he doesn't even think a lot of the things that he did are all that
no doubt
cool to other people. He doesn't really try to go out of his way to be like, oh yeah, I did this, that, and the other. Hell, it took us like 2 months in here to realize that he called the Bartman play.
Yeah,
it's like wild. But anyways, back to the
he never even talks about the games that he covered.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't. But no, the one thing I will say about Paul brought this up with being in solidarity with your young child, bringing a glove. So we bought my dad's house, and I was going through all these family heirlooms and all this family stuff. I found my dad's A2000 from college, and it is the coolest thing. I mean, it's just in such shitty shape. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it's 40 plus years old, but he's got this Wilson A2000 that he wore playing for the Earlham Hustling Quakers back in college,
That's right.
and it is
you got to restore it.
Right, I take it down to Elkins down the street in Hamilton, and he'll restore that glove for me. But yeah, that is something that I treasured. I immediately picked it up. I was like, we could throw everything else away. We got to keep this ball glove.
Last thing before we go to the fraud chart. Tease the fraud chart really fast.
Yeah, well, you guys, the fraud chart is I made a chart, an alignment chart of teams that are winning and how fraudy they are. It's in the drive, guys. It's not actually on the.
All right. So while they're looking that up,
not in the drive.
I
but
have
on
a business.
singular.
I have a business idea, and I want the chat to just rip this business idea apart if we don't think it's good. I don't know who's going to do it. I don't have the time to do it. Maybe someone that has some venture capital money can throw some money at it and do it. There needs to be a print shop or a ticketing shop that still makes tickets. And if they don't make tickets and you can start making tickets, do it. They need to make
just emailed it to you, Casey.
Fake tickets for people that want essentially a paper ticket to have it memorialized, right? Like last year I went to the national. Everybody does this, right? Everybody has a game they want, and you literally don't have paper tickets anymore. It's gone, completely gone. So how do I immortalize? Is immortalize the right word?
If you can get those at the stadium.
Well, okay. I would also say this: like I was going to the national championship game last year, right? You buy it through StubHub or whatever ticketing service. You have it on your phone. The last thing I'm doing, Reed, when I'm going to a big game is like going and trying to stand in the line and get a fake ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. This should be an online service. You can type in the game that you went to. You can type in, and you know what? It's one of those things where they don't need to validate it. Who cares? If somebody wants to lie and order a ticket that they didn't go to the game in, then okay, so what? You should be able to click the game you go to. You should be able to put in the section number and the seat. They print off a ticket that they've designed. It doesn't even need to be real. I could care less. It doesn't make any difference. Print it off, send it in the mail in some nice looking envelope, and boom. Someone tell me this exists. Please tell me. I hope that's one thing I hope. I actually hope that this business already exists because we're not creating it. And I'd like to have some tickets.
You would like tickets for the national championship game
and some other games. I mean, I could go back and I'd like to have tickets to the first Packers game I went to, or whatever.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Does that work?
You can get tickets at the stadium, but yeah, I'm sure there's a service where they immortalize a piece of that game for you. I'm sure that can be without a doubt done. All right, let's get to this fraud chart. All right, so I did my best to hastily put together an alignment chart. And how this alignment chart is...
Casey, just shrink it down.
The higher you are on this chart, there's 4 quadrants. The higher you are on this chart, the more you are winning, currently winning. The farther to the right you are on this chart, you're for real. So if you're at the bottom, you're a loser. You're on the left, you're a fraud. You're on the right, you're for real. Top, you're winners. So as you can see, the Minnesota Vikings, they're winning quite a bit. 10-game winners. But I think we could all agree, out of any team in the NFL, they're probably the fraudiest. And you look at, just to have a benchmark, the New England Patriots, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, kind of sitting right around that middle to where they're exactly the team that we expect them to be, and they're winning or losing right around there.
I don't hate this list.
I think the Eagles are winning, and they're for real as it gets. The Chargers aren't winning as much, but I think they're for real. I think the Commanders are a team that people don't talk about enough.
You're all out on the Vikings.
Vikings, yeah. The Giants are there too. Titans.
Leif Erikson would be pissed.
Yeah, we need him back in the chat.
Hang on, I have a question.
Yeah, sling it my way, Big Pimpin'.
So you have the Ravens
barely beyond the parameter of fraud. I think they are probably a little less than how certain people perceive them.
They're slightly a fraud.
But you have them really high up as winners.
Yeah, they're 9-game winners.
Because they're winning.
Yeah, they've won 9 games.
But the winner, what I'm saying is the winner-loser thing is not relative to how many actual
correct,
wins
because the Bengals are lower when they have the exact same state record.
So you're all out on the Vikings.
Pretty much.
Okay. That's what we got. Okay.
He's all out on the Titans.
Out on the Titans. The Giants, I was out on when they were 5-1 or 6-1 or whatever they were. And so they've come crashing back down to earth.
So we actually kind of align on how we feel on most of these teams, honestly.
I think you guys have the Ravens way farther left than I do. I probably should have put them right on the line on the median of for real and fraud.
I would put them right by the Dolphins. That's where I would have them at.
Who's the biggest? Yeah, then you got the Lions down there that are losing, but they're closer to for real than people realize. I will never discount the Steelers and what they're able to do.
Yep.
I'd put the Texans, the worst team in the NFL, in the for real quadrant.
Yeah, I was wondering where that was going.
But they're not frauds. I mean, people realize that they're the worst team in the league, so they're probably a little better than people perceive them to be. So think of the middle line, the vertical line as perception.
Yeah. I mean, the Packers have beat the Bears twice, and they're behind them, but I'm not judging you.
They're higher than them, so they're higher on the winner.
They're higher on the winning because they literally the winning and losing has nothing to do with you. That's just what they've done.
Right.
Right. Yeah. This is a little bit of a Casey stink list from time to time, but whatever. That's fair.
Yeah. The fraud list is better. The fraud chart's better than the stink list.
All right. So this is something you should have.
Wow.
You have anything to say about the fraud list, boys? Before we
No, I like
this. Fraud chart. Excuse me.
It's fair. I mean, there's obviously needs to be some housekeeping on where teams align with their winning and losing, the actual factual stuff. But I feel pretty good about the left to right, the fraud to for real.
Okay.
We got to figure out a better phrase than for real.
Legit.
Deal.
Legit. I like legit. All right. So the final thing that I want to get to today is just about these MLB contracts, as Trace has allowed me so honestly. So he's allowed me one baseball topic today.
Right. Then watch the numbers in the chat just drop.
We're at 52 right now.
The one thing
we'll be down to 30. Don't leave on purpose.
There's a lot to do about the length of these contracts. Carlos Correa signed for 13 years, and Thom brought it up in his show. A lot of people are like, the entire front office will be gone. The manager will be gone. Carlos Correa will be 41 when he completes this contract. I think people are hung up in these years, but the years mean nothing, guys. They truly mean nothing, because all these players care about on these final contracts of their career is the guaranteed money. So $350 million is easier to swallow for the Giants when they spread out that payment amongst 13 years. When you don't have a salary cap, it doesn't matter. You're just trying to keep your salary lower each year. You don't have to fit it out and be like, all right, well, we're getting that off the books. So $40 million a year over 9 years. You'll do $30 million a year over 14 years. Think of it like a car payment. You'll take a brand new car, instead of doing the 48-month payment, you do the 72-month payment, getting 2 years, brings your car payment down lower. That's all they're doing. They're just making it so they're not spending as much money each year. They don't care if they're paying $27 million to Carlos Correa when he's 41 years old. They don't. And Carlos Correa doesn't care when he's getting $350 million. He just matters that he's getting $350 million. That's the only point I have to say is don't look at these length of these contracts that are constantly coming out and thinking,
what's awesome
these are ridiculous.
You know what's awesome about that is that really, really wealthy people are doing what poor is a strong word. I don't want to call it poor, but are doing what some poor people do.
What about
they're like, you're like, I really want this, but I can't really afford it. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this thing, and I'm just going to do 72-month payment on it because I can do that.
Right, I could pay as opposed to the 4-year payment, the 48-month payment.
Yeah, and it's not a terrible strategy, but I think it's one of those things where, again, MLB is just going to be in a tough spot because it's always going to be the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots have got to find a way to be able to compete with the folks that spend all the money in different ways. And that's where the analytics are interesting. That's where Thom's analytic take can be a little off at times, is that you do have to do different things with different franchises to be successful, and that's not the case in the NFL. The NFL has proven it doesn't matter. Every team's relatively equal, and we're going to live with the fact that it's going to be a national brand, and we're all going to benefit. Rising tide raises all ships in the NFL.
Right.
MLB's not that way. And
do you think the NFL will ever go back to the way the game was played 80 years or 40 years ago?
Griffey is still getting paid by the Reds. In fact, I like Bacon. He's
like their third
highest player on the Reds right now.
He's getting like $4 million a year.
Griffey Jr. is.
But do you think that the NFL, so these things are cyclical, right? Yeah. It's punch, counter punch in the strategy of the sports world, to where if a team's going to run the ball a lot, you say, all right, I think we've got this edge in passing a lot. Well, now these teams are opening up the playbook and passing a lot more. Do you think it'll ever come back full circle to the way the game was played back in the 1980s and 90s?
I don't know if it'll ever be that.
Where there's 3 running backs in the backfield and you're running the ball, just pounding it down their throat and keeping it low-scoring games.
That's what's cool about, and I'm not going to turn this into a college football subject, but that is actually what's really cool about college football right now. You have a couple programs that decided to do the old school approach. They went out and found the best tight ends in the country. They went out and tried to find, and again, your Georgias and Michigans are always going to be relatively good. They could probably go out and get, for the most part, guys that they want for mostly any position. But my point is that Michigan and Georgia really have decided to go back to the old school way, which is 12 personnel, 13 personnel, and stack the box and say, hey, we're going to run it for 3 or 4 yards a carry, and you're going to wear down because USCs of the world have 6'6", 200-pound linebackers. And the reason that they have that is because they play in a league that if you don't have that, you can't cover 5 wide receivers. So it's this paradigm of like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Which one prevails? And I think college football is like right in the middle of that right now.
Well, that's what's funny is 10 years ago, there was few teams in college football that ran quote unquote pro style, under center, single back, tight ends, and working the whole thing. The most successful teams ran a spread.
Rich Rodriguez of the world, West Virginia.
Yeah, ran a spread. Those are the most successful teams. Now in the NFL, you're seeing that very same thing happen. The most successful team, the Chiefs, the Bengals, they're running these spread offenses.
Yep.
And now college football has gone back to where the most elite teams are back to just saying, hey, we got the biggest guys on the field. We're just going to pound it down your throat.
That's right.
And we'll see if the NFL follows suit.
And I wonder if it's the reason for that, too, I would say, is a little bit of the rules. I mean, the rules in the NFL have significantly been catered to the offense. It seems as if like one of the best plays in the NFL, and again, I'm not claiming to be much of a football purist and know everything about it, but I'm being serious. If you don't throw 5 or 6 or 7 balls just completely like just go routes down the field, then you're not running what I would call an intelligent offense. Because hell, pass interferences are called a lot. And that's the most probably profitable penalty without question in the league. Throw the ball as far as you can down the field. Hopefully the DB doesn't turn his head. Maybe they trip over themselves. They push the receiver, and they throw a flag, and you got a 50-yard penalty.
Third and long, do it more often than not, because think about the 3 total outcomes that you can have. Underthrow them just a little bit so that the wide receiver and the defensive back are running into one another. You either get a turnover because they're going to throw an interception, which if it's incomplete, you're going to punt the next play anyways.
Yeah.
Or you get catches it for a touchdown, or you get a penalty.
Yeah. And then not to turn this into the complete college football, but MK here on the chat says that everyone's gone back to that except for the good old Ryan Day. Listen, Ryan Day, he's a good football coach, but if Ryan Day is in such a bad spot right now, guys, because I've been thinking about this, if he doesn't win his next 2 games, which that's hard to do, period, they're gonna have it out for his ass.
Next 2 games in
if he doesn't beat Georgia.
Yeah,
they're going to say, well, they're soft and they don't run the right offense and he doesn't have the
They
right
don't start
type
with
of
Notre Dame
culture
next
there.
year, though, do they?
Right? I don't know. But then on top of that, let's say they win that game and they lose to Michigan, it's almost worse. He's in a really bad spot. If he doesn't win the national championship, you guys are going to kill this man. It's like,
it's almost better if they lose to Georgia than to win and lose.
Yeah, if they win and lose to Michigan in the championship.
Now that's assuming Michigan wins.
It's just not a fair spot for Ryan Day. I think that you got to also understand as an Ohio State fan, and I'm obviously not. I'm repping the G today. Is like they're without their RB1, their best running back to start the year. They're out him. They're out RB or WR1, wide receiver 1, which you could say, yeah, Harrison Jr. is a better player than Smith and Jigba. I don't know. I'm not going to argue that, but what I am going to say is that still losing one of those guys hurts a lot. And they're right there. They played one bad half of football, and this guy's just getting dragged through the mud. And you've brought this up before, time and time again. What a miserable job. What a miserable fan base.
You remember when
fandom.
You remember when Mike Tomlin was rumored for being the USC's head coach last year, and he literally got on the microphone. He's like, why the hell would I want to coach in college? Like, why would I want to do that? And
college football is brutal.
It is brutal. You got to go. Gosh, don't get me started on this. You've got to go 11-1 every year to even have some semblance of a good season.
To know what you mean, like it is bad. It's really college football is a job that genuinely is outside of the pay. Yeah, is it the worst job in sports? Being the head football coach of a college. Think about what they're doing right now.
Yeah,
Think about
if you take pay aside, which I mean that's a big part of it, right?
I know it's what. Well, okay, I would even. Okay. I'll say this: keep the pay in there. I don't care. Keep the pay in there. Okay, keep the pay in there. It's still arguably one of the worst jobs, in my opinion. And I know you, because I'm taking just basically, and I'm not just saying this because of the Mike Leach situation, but like your health has to matter at some point. Like the grind of doing that. Granted, there's only a few people that I would say like have stood the test of time, and that's like your Nick Sabans of the world, et cetera, et cetera. But Dabo Swinney, who used to be the man down in Clemson, hey, give him a couple more years of not being in the college football playoffs, and then he's on the chopping block. Right now, college football coaches are trying to, and let's just say Ryan Day. Let's use Ryan Day as an example. This man right now is trying to prepare for the college football playoff. He's trying to figure out his NIL situation with recruiting. And the portal just opened.
Right.
Like, gosh. Forget Christmas, guys. Forget the holiday season. Horrible.
Tough.
I'm serious. Like, college football, being a head football coach, one of the worst jobs in sports.
Thomas might be right, though. Athletic director at a major college is close, because then you get none of the praise that these head coaches get and all of the flack when it goes bad.
You don't. Listen, I mean, we've talked about John Cunningham on this show before. Yeah, he might get some heat, but I mean,
sure.
Luke Fickell.
You're right.
Luke Fickell. No one's being like, hell, I honestly, maybe it's because, when was the last time Ohio State's athletic director got heat? Ryan Day's got pitchforks in his front yard.
Speaking of big time college coaches, Luke Fickell's in Hamilton, Ohio today. He's at that school down the road.
Luke Fickell's in Ohio today?
He's in Hamilton, Ohio today. He's at lunch.
Right now?
Yeah.
For what?
He's at the Catholic school in town.
Oh, he's trying to get Braden Moore?
Braden Moore already committed, but yeah, he committed to Wisconsin.
Braden Moore that much, huh?
Yeah, 4-star.
Used to play in the front yard with Braden Moore's dad.
There you go. All right, let's get to the final segment. Well, the second final segment, and that's today's scam of the day.
He's going to tell you to stop on the scam of the day. Because
scam of the day, scam of the day, dun, 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 scam of the day, scam of the day. All right. Got that little intro. We got that little soundbar. Can't hear anything.
We got to find a way to make it to where, we're getting hand signals.
Right.
I feel like I'm staring at the side of a college football field where they got like 10 guys over there giving you like some kind of signals. I have no idea.
It was kind of funny. It was kind of funny because you were just like, hey, he's going to want us to stop talking. We already started.
He'd already played it.
I saw it. I saw the hand signals. All right, so the scam of the day, and this is, I have a top 5 worst scams in America, and this is easily in the top 5. It might be the number 1 spot, but it's pretty simple. Funerals are the biggest scams, one of the biggest scams in this country. People go into debt when a person dies. The average funeral costs $10,000 to put a man in the ground, man or woman in the ground. Guys, I'm going to say this before I get into my spiel. If I die young, throw me in the trash. I don't care what you do with my body. I don't care. Most of the time, the person doesn't care what they do with their body, but you feel entitled to give this person a right ritual burial. Put them in a nice bedded casket, paying thousands of dollars for the nicest casket, and then you just put it in the ground. What other major expense in your life do you pay thousands and thousands of dollars, and the first thing you do with it is just get it all dirty, throw it in the ground, put dirt on top of it? And that's what caskets and funerals are. $10,000 for the average funeral. What are we doing?
Can I make a suggestion? If you're gonna do that, why don't you just buy a car and then get thrown off a cliff? Make it like dramatic.
Yes!
Just make it
That's
all.
awesome.
Just go all out for
Casey
it.
gets it. Here, actually, I take it back. If you're gonna spend $10K on my funeral, this is to my family.
What a take!
Take me to the Fort Ancient Bridge. Put a cinder block on an old beater and take me off the bridge, and just let it just be this symbolic. Just going off the bridge. I love it, Casey. Casey's got the right idea. But guys,
at what point, I was just thinking of something. Is there ever going to become a point where they start selling things that go inside of the caskets or whatever else that would be like
canned goods, water bottle?
Yeah. No. Like it would almost be something to where like just in case something were to happen.
Right.
Your loved one would have something, blah, blah, blah. Like,
well,
this is a terrible thought of the day. I was just thinking and visualizing like some little small TV screen that's like in there. It's like, yeah, this plays all of the major hits.
So you know where the phrase "Saved by the Bell" comes from, don't you?
Yes.
Back in the Middle Ages. Yeah, back in the Middle Ages, they would tie strings and run it up through the ground to a bell, because back in the day, they didn't know what comas were. like a person would just be there, not dead, but dead, and they would just put them in the ground. And every once in a while, you'd hear, fully put all the dirt on him, you just hear ding, 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 ding. Like, yep, we got to get this guy out of the ground. He wasn't dead. So that's where the phrase "Saved by the Bell" comes from.
Good show, by the way.
It is a good show. I'll say this. And this goes to one last thing about a funeral if I die young. Family, please do not spend $10,000 for my funeral. Go to Wrigley Field, sit behind home plate if you want to do some way to memorialize me. I don't care what you do with my body. You could throw it in the Great Miami River for all I care. But please, if you're going to spend money, do something cool. I mean, don't just buy something expensive and throw it in the ground. That's all I'm saying.
It's a tough spot to be as
you feel like you're supposed to.
That's what they have on every human, is their emotions of the people that care about the person that died, and they want to do whatever they can to make it the best for them. And that's what they're doing. They're just pulling on your emotions like every other good business.
Sure. And that's where Casey has found out recently, where I've found out recently, and where Paul is going to find out very soon.
Oh, yeah. Paul.
Is there's a big expense that you got coming up here soon that you just feel like you don't understand why you're doing it. You just feel like you're supposed to do it.
Exactly.
And that's the engagement ring.
And really quickly about engagement rings, I'm being serious about this.
Kelly,
what's the fake diamond?
Moissanite.
Moissanite.
Okay. Why isn't that a thing?
It is a thing. That's what I used.
Is a thing.
Okay. So
it's 5 times. A diamond is
More
5
affordable?
times more expensive than moissanite.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But in my opinion, and this is my fiance's opinion too, moissanite looks better. It's more shinier. It's you can get it in a bigger size. You know, you spend $1,000, $2,000 on it, and you're getting like double, triple the size rock.
Everett Henry, just wait till you pay for the wedding flowers.
Good point.
Hey,
Yeah,
weddings are
flowers,
coming up
oof.
on the scam of the day. Coming to a scam of the day near you soon. All right, what's for lunch today?
Yeah, for those that don't know, we do this weird thing at the end of every show where we throw up a bunch of names on a wheel to where we go to lunch. If you have a suggestion, you can put it in the chat. And
Is Panda Express open?
I keep putting it on here.
There's no way, right?
I'm gonna put it on here.
so.
Firehouse Subs is opened here in Hamilton. Opened today.
Paul's wearing a
Not
TCU
Firehouse,
shirt
I mean Jersey Mike's.
because he has a TCU shirt. It's
free.
And he likes wearing it because I guess they're in the playoff.
It's free.
All right. What else are we putting on here?
Did you put Jersey Mike's on there?
Yep,
already?
I put it on there.
Raisin Cane's.
Everett. Everett. $60 a stem.
Canes is on there.
Weddings are a scam.
Yeah.
There's a lot of scams around.
A lot of things they
By
tug,
the way,
they tug on. what
before
you're
we spin
supposed
this
to do.
wheel, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This has to be fact, right? The reason that you have engagement rings and the reason that you have weddings in the manner that our society does it is because somebody came up with a huge marketing tactic at the beginning of all this that started this phenomenon of saying you don't care about the person that you love unless you do this.
Same with
And
funerals.
that has to be what it is, right?
Right. Same with
And funerals.
Right.
Like, that's genuinely what this all is.
Weddings have always been a celebratory thing, but as for
Well,
spending,
celebrating in the manner of you spending all that money has to be some marketing tactic.
right? But no, like engagement rings. They back in the 1800s, people didn't buy engagement rings. You said you want to get married, and then
Yeah.
you wore a ring to symbolize the marriage, which was normally just a
What a
gold
wild.
ring.
I mean, also another conspiracy theory I heard the other day that has to be true
Gold Star, love it.
is Walt Disney and Frozen. We've heard this. Everyone's heard this conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah,
So-
that he's frozen.
What?
That he is frozen personally.
Well,
yeah, that okay. I'll take it from here, and Paul can correct me if I'm wrong. The story goes, the conspiracy goes, is that they named the show, or not the show, but the movie and the series Frozen, so that when you go to Google now and you type in Walt Disney Frozen, or you Google Frozen period, with
It takes
Disney
you that
involved
movie.
at all,
Takes you that movie.
that's what it comes up with first.
Smart.
And then boom, buried on the back pages is my man Walt Disney literally being frozen.
Yeah, smart.
I'm just saying. Hey, man, breaking news on this box lunch. By the way, fantastic day, fantastic show. Thank you to the chat. Go ahead, run the wheel. We'll see what we get.
Oh, we're looking for suggestions here.
For those that don't know, box lunch runs Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Tom runs every day, Monday through Friday, 10
Twilight
a.m.
Holy Girl Everett.
Box lunch comes on right after. I see some new names in the chat. We appreciate some people. I don't know who MK is, but appreciate him being here. Of course, all the regs. Sir Boy, Jolly, Thomas. By the way, is it Thomas or Tomas?
It's Thomas.
Okay, Tom's just Tom.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Everett. Andrew Harold. Haven't seen him here before. What about who's the guy from earlier that I haven't?
That's a
never
good
seen in the
list. That's a
chat?
good list, guys.
Go ahead, spin the wheel.
Well, we need Hannah off there.
All right, she's gone.
There we go. All right.
See ya.
See you,
That's
Gold
tough.
Star. Smell you later.
We don't even have a Gold Star convenience.
Robbie Twitty,
What do you
another guy.
mean?
Maybe
It's
he's been
before.
here before, I don't know.
It's on the west side.
Emperor
closed.
Starscream, by the way, yesterday
closed?
hits us with the old.
When?
Do you guys do this every day?
Like 2 weeks ago. We went. It won. We went. Oh, you were out of town.
Yeah, we went, but
Quit
the
worrying about Reed. Just keep running the wheel.
the indoor was
The
closed.
indoor. Yeah, you had to do dry.
Reed was lounging around on a beach. Why are we worried about him?
Oh,
See ya,
well, there went Panda.
Good thing Panda's gone because that isn't even open yet.
That's no lunch.
Big list today.
MK.
Hate to see Gina's gone.
Muskie's talk. MK is asking for Muskie's talk, and the reality is that Muskie's talk is going to come when, Paul? When's the next time we should relatively talk about the Muskies? Friday?
Big East play starts Friday. Yeah, we could do that.
Okay.
No New Jersey.
Oh, man.
I was gonna do the
That's
buffalo
tough.
chicken.
I really.
Oh, Jersey.
Oh,
we
we
always
Cubs. No, not Canes again. All right, good.
Nice.
Going
Now
Hispanic.
These two. Why do these get even on the list? Why? At some point, these things need to be just dropped off.
You could. I'm willing to sub Taco Bell for Jersey Mike's.
I'm willing to sub Chipotle for Jersey Mike's.
Are we going
Sounds
to?
like-
Are we
it
just
sounds
going
like we wanna go to
Are,
Jersey
are we
Mike's.
just going to Jersey Mike's?
Spin the wheel.
We gotta respect the wheel.
Quesarito, leader of lunch.
Taco Bell it is. Quick lunch.
Baja Blast.
What other sound bites do you have over there?
So here, hold on. I got.
Can't hear him. So.
You can't hear him, but
Well,
I got.
as soon as you hit them, let us know.
It's tired.
Well, that we don't have tired yet.
Okay, that's not in. That played to nothing. We got the real man.
It's a real man.
Leader of men.
Leader of men.
And then we got. I think is this a SpongeBob?
Yep.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Chat, we're leaving right now. I need you to know, is there anything before tomorrow's show that we need to have as a soundbite on the soundboard?
And we also have a buzzer. We're gonna have that for
that's
tomorrow's
coming
show.
tomorrow. That after lunch, that's priority A. We're getting that bad boy ready to roll.
We just got to switch over to the new graphics package.
Exactly. All right, I don't see. I mean, we're probably not giving them enough time, which is part of what we do here.
You can tweet us.
You can tweet us. Let us know.
At Seabox Sports, at Reed Mouse Radio, at Paul Frichner, at Seabox Trace.
Gates of Hell by Thom. There we go. We'll get it in there. Gates. By the way, have you ever seen someone so passionate about the NCAA and their rulings than Thom?
Okay, here's what I will say, and if it gets brought up again, I'll bring it up. But I didn't want to just keep hammering it. Like clearly I wasn't changing his mind, so I just didn't.
I did notice that you just backed down.
I just didn't want to keep going on about it. But for anybody that's actually like interested in this case and willing to have an open mind about it and read it, ESPN's entire report about this originally that was published, that was the whole deal about what happened and him getting suspended, all of this from back in 2017, 18, it was retracted by ESPN because it had so many false things in it. So many things that were wrong in the actual report that was published 5 years ago now that we've been waiting on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, there's a lot of details. I know not everybody's a college basketball fan. I know this doesn't matter to everybody. But as it relates to the city, I know it matters to a lot of people here. And it'll be a national story. I mean, this is a story that HBO did a documentary on. You know, the scheme. You can look back at Christian Dawkins and the whole thing. I mean, there is just so much about this that if you really put the time and effort into understanding all of the facts of this case, it's not a surprise that he didn't get a suspension here.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Does Louisville feel like, I don't know, dumb for firing Rick Pitino? Because,
I've thought about that.
Right. I mean, what's it matter? I mean, you get a slap on the wrist. Like, they thought they were doing the right thing for the program at the time, but it's clearly not the case.
I've thought about that too. I just think that when you look at Louisville, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, Louisville, that's exactly
Louisville.
right. Louisville. Louisville? Mouthful of marbles. Louisville. That they've just gone through so much as a program since Pitino left, and all there was always this cloud hanging over. Can they recruit? Can they not? What if I'm a recruit here? Am I going to get a penalty? And I think one huge thing, and I tweeted this earlier, one big thing from the NCAA, and again, the committee that put this out, was that they said today in their report that they were intentional in not prescribing penalties that would have a negative impact on current student athletes. And I think that is a huge, huge line for the future of the NCAA, because so many times we see teams that have penalties from 5 years ago, the NCAA drags their feet, and then all of a sudden you have kids that were 13 years old when all of this started.
They're the ones getting punished.
Getting punished for something that they were in 8th grade when it first came out. And that's not right. That's not right.
So the NCAA puts itself in a weird box to where they have two options. It's either punish kids who had nothing to do with it,
right,
and get all the facts straight. So get all the facts straight, take time, and then people that had nothing to do with it are the ones getting punished, or 2, act very swiftly and maybe not all have all the facts right, and you might miss.
But I think there's a happy medium where it doesn't take 5 years to figure this out.
Yeah,
it doesn't take 5 years.
That's the real issue. It's the lack of quickness when it comes to these accusations and the penalty that follows. It should not take more than a year to come down with whatever it may be with a penalty. And it's called bureaucracy, guys. Look it up. That's all this is.
I will tweet out a thread. I'll quote tweet it here in a minute. It is a thread detailing every single thing from that original ESPN report. And if you really boil it down, Aaron Torres has been on it for years. I quote tweeted him a little bit ago. If you really boil it down, the facts were just not there to back up anything about this case. Even going back to the original huge story of paying DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, and if you're going to pay a guy, if we're being honest, you do pay. I mean, give credit. If Sean Miller was paying guys, if you're going to pay a guy, that's the guy you pay. I mean, he is a great player. Have you ever seen? Did you see how good DeAndre Ayton was when he was at Arizona? He's a hell of a player. So give credit to Sean Miller for seeing guys. Now, Bill Self, on the other hand, he's out here paying, I don't even remember the guy's name because he didn't even play more than 2 games for Kansas. Now he's in trouble for paying some guy that didn't even play. But anyways, I digress. Listen, guys, chat, I appreciate it. We are back every day with Thom at 10 a.m. Our numbers have been growing. We appreciate it. We're going to continue to try to make this show bigger and better. If you have any suggestions, you can always let us know. In the meantime, we will be back. Box lunch portion of this show will be back on Friday. And in the meantime, enjoy your life. Yeah. That's what matters the most.
See you guys.
See ya.